manufactured locally for the Carolinas.
Locked down!
This is the Rob Brown Show.
Get robbed!
Only on
The Fan Upstate.
Can you dig it?
Ladies, gentlemen, boys, and girls, welcome in. The Rob Brown Show is live on your radio. This is the Fan Upstate. Welcome in. Great to have you. Day number 3 of a special edition of the Rob Brown Show, presented by our friends at Ingles here at the College Football Hall of Fame. It is Southeastern Conference Media Days. Day number 3, Wednesday, July 16th, will include the Alabama Crimson Tide, the Mississippi State Bulldogs, the mighty jort-wearing Gators of Florida, and the Boomer Sooners of Oklahoma University. We'll have Brent Venables in the house. We'll have Billy Napier in the house. We'll have Kalen DeBoer in the house today, amongst obviously a group of players. And before we get to any of that, well, let's first and foremost kick it back to the beautiful network studios in Greenville, South Carolina, where the great one Lonzo currently resides, holding the fort down solo. What up, great one?
Holding it down, yo. You look like you're having fun.
You know, I've had worse weeks of work. I've had a lot, as in both in quality and quantity, of worse weeks of work. Yesterday, let me give you a quick story to set up an interview that I'm going to play a chunk of later on in the radio program. Yesterday, I was sitting here in the afternoon. We were waiting for the afternoon session yesterday to get set up as Tennessee and Texas were coming through. Josh Heupel, a.k.a. Old Bobby Hill, was here. And, of course, we had Steve Sarkisian of Texas, and Arch Manning was going to be in the house. So I wanted to see what Arch had to say, and I've got some quotes and some clips from Arch later on, as he is obviously, I think, the biggest, I'm going to use the word celebrity football player in the Southeastern Conference, which I think is fair this year. And I think later when I tell you why, you'll understand. This dude was getting followed around yesterday like he was the world's biggest rock star coming off the stage after a concert at Wembley or something. I mean, it was just I have used the word gaggle a couple of times this week. It was the biggest gaggle of people following Arch around that I have seen, and I'm going to set it up this way intentionally, Zoe, because you will understand what I mean here. It was the biggest gaggle of people that I have seen following around a coach or a player at any media day I have ever attended. It was a bigger group of people, and this is not a slight at, although it's going to be taken that way. I have not seen a group of people that large following Dabo Swinney around at ACC Media Days, and he is the rock star celebrity at that event. I haven't seen it. This kid would walk around the media pit below me yesterday, and at any given point, you could turn around and know exactly where Arch was, because there would be this huge gathering of people around him whenever he moved from station to station. There were some clips going around yesterday because down in the lower bowels of the College Football Hall of Fame, ESPN has their own room, like their own dedicated room where they are bringing coaches and players to do one-on-one interviews and allow them to talk to Heather Dinich and some of the other, big name broadcasters for that outlet. And they started popping some videos when Arch rolled in. And first off, and I say this with nothing but love, that kid is so Manning. Like, the way that he looks, he showed up, great one, in the standard frat boy get up of khakis, white shirt, blue blazer, tie. All right, that's just the standard. That is every dude's first suit and tie combo is khakis, white shirt, blue blazer, some sort of tie that incorporates gold in it. And that's what he showed up in. And he's just I don't really know how to put it because there's not a way to put it that's not going to sound to some degree insulting, though it's not meant to be. He's just kind of like goofy, lanky, casual. He's Peyton and he's Eli in the way that he looks and he talks and he acts. And it was just amusing to watch the biggest name in college football, at least on the players' side this year, just be Peyton and Eli at their most casual. It was great.
I mean, that's awesome. But how many games has he won in college football?
That's going to be the big question. Now, I would like to bring something else up. Great one here. Yesterday, about 2:30 in the afternoon, as I was hanging out waiting for the second round of coaches' speeches to get going, next to me on the left is another broadcast table from KTTC, I believe, in Dallas, Texas. And I've gotten to, over the last couple of days, gotten to know the guys that are working for that station. We've shaken hands and we've talked a little bit about their show and about my show, and we've exchanged pleasantries and yada, yada, yada. And as I look over from cutting up audio and video for the show today, I look over at their table and they're doing an interview. And I looked up because I heard the subject of their interview answering a question about Arch Manning. And when I turned my head to the left and looked at the interviewer, I thought to myself, my goodness gracious, that might be the largest human being I have ever seen. And I am not talking about like a big fat dude. I'm talking about Rick, like just big, just massive. And I was like, damn, that's the biggest dude that I have ever seen in person. And I didn't really think anything of it. So I went back to my computer and I'm putting together some video. And then I went, I got to look at this guy again, right? Like in a sentence that you don't want to say too many times in life. I'm like, I got to look at this guy again. And I look over to the left and I realized that the gentleman sitting there doing an interview was the world's strongest man and multi-time WWE World Champion and WWE Hall of Famer, Mark Henry, was sitting at the table. And by the way, great one, two-time now buddy of the show, World's Strongest Man and former WWE World Champion, Mark Henry. And I'm like, oh, damn, that's Mark Henry. That's why he's such a big man. So we got to the break, or they got to their break. And I walked over and I was talking to the gentleman who was very clearly setting up Mark Henry's interview schedule. And I'm like, you know what? I'd love to have Mark sit down and we'll just talk wrestling. And I said, you know, it maybe isn't something that I'm going to use this week while we're here, but it'll be cool to put an interview with Mark Henry about the current state of WWE in the can. And, you know, we'll run it back next week when we have some time. So I'm talking to the guy and I said, hey, my name is Rob Brown. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. I am a big wrestling guy. I'm a huge Mark Henry fan. I'd love to see if I could get him on the air. Are you his manager, agent? And the guy looked at me and he said, no, I'm his co-host. And I kind of scratched my head there for a second because Mark Henry is on Busted Open Radio, which is now a 24/7 professional wrestling channel because nobody cares about wrestling. Definitely not enough for Sirius XM to dedicate any channel to it 24/7, right? So I was like, he doesn't have a co-host. He has his own show. And I said, oh, well, co-host on what, if you don't mind me asking? And he said, oh, we're doing a show together on 1300 AM The Zone in Austin, Texas, covering the Longhorns. And I went, Mark Henry? And he said, yeah, we do a show together. We're co-hosts. We do Texas football. And I was like, oh, all right. So I said, listen, I'd love to have Mr. Henry on if he gets a couple of minutes. I'm free for the next hour and a half till my next interview. And he said, yeah, we got you. You're up next. And I said, all right, great. So he finishes that interview and he grabs the water and he comes back and Mark Henry sits down and I shake his hand and I said, hey, I obviously don't remember you do 1,000 of these a day, but we had you on our show last year in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm glad you're coming back. I said, but college football? And he said, yeah. He said, I love college football. And he tells the story, and I'm going to play the interview for you later on in the show, or at least a big chunk of it, because we went on for like 25 minutes, right? So I was talking to him, and when I asked him about jumping into the college football world, he said, I've always loved football. And he said in the interview, he didn't phrase it this way, I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty close. He said that he truly believes that he only made one mistake in his life. And that mistake was he feels like he should have stuck with football longer and then came to wrestling later. He's like, I got the bug for wrestling. I jumped in, I walked away from football, and I probably should have played football a little longer. I probably should have stayed in the game. He said, mind of a champion, and obviously as strong as I was, I think I could have been a truly great football player, and then I could have gotten into wrestling later on. I said, well, it worked out pretty damn well for you, I think. And he laughed, and he said, yeah, but he said, I wish I would have stuck with football. I love football. I've always been a football guy. I've always been a sports guy, and since I started doing the stuff on Busted Open, I've just fallen in love with radio and everything that you get to do in this world. And I said, yeah, no, I totally understand. I've been doing it for 17 years and, I don't get paid very much, but I get to come here and do stuff like this. And he kind of laughed and said his favorite 2 words on planet Earth, now great one. And I had this hilarious moment of connection with the world's strongest man and former multi-time WWE world champion Mark Henry when he said, my favorite 2 words in the world right now are press pass. And I said, yep, nope, I feel you, dog. I absolutely feel you on that. So
people don't understand what a golden ticket that thing is.
It's the best. It's the best. So I guess the point of all of that, great one, is the interesting thing. I'll tell you one more story here in a second about somebody I'm going to be talking to after we go off the air for tomorrow. I think my favorite thing about these events is not just that we are knees deep in the football waters now. I had David Nuno from TexAgs.com. We're going to play his interview for you later on because he had some takes on South Carolina and the Aggies, and we're going to talk about that later on in the show. But I had Nuno on, and when we were starting the interview, he said, does this feel like the start of football season to you? And I was like, yeah. I said, Lonzo and I have been having this conversation for weeks now that the last couple of weeks were, as we call it, hashtag peak off season and hashtag ranking season. And this Monday, when I got in here and I got set up and we started talking football and I'm listening to 200 other broadcast outlets talk about football, it truly feels like football. And there is one more element of this that I think is kind of entertaining. I also got the chance yesterday to sit down and have a conversation with Peter Burns of the Southeastern Conference Network. Peter Burns, I met, 15 years ago.
Who was making fun of Dabo? I don't know if you've seen the video.
No, I have not.
There's a video from a Chinese robot running down a hill, and it's dressed in orange. And he said Dabo running towards a big loss to LSU or something like that. That's messed up.
Well, I will.
If I find it again, I'll send it to you.
Peter Burns is one of the few broadcasters that I have seen that is capable. Like, he's an LSU homer, and he doesn't apologize for it, but still keeps it real. So Peter Burns sat down with me yesterday, and we actually weren't going to get that interview. The young lady that was booking him came over, and she was like, I'm very sorry. She's like, we overbooked, and we're having to cut some off the edges. She said, I'll try to get you somebody tomorrow, but I don't know if Peter's going to make it over. And I said, yep, nope, I understand. That's kind of part of the game. We've had a couple of interviews that have been late ads, including one I'm going to tell you here in a minute. And we've had a couple more that, they have to move or they have to bump a day or they just have to cancel outright. So it's like, it's not unusual for that to happen. She said, I'll try to get him to you tomorrow. And if I can't get him, I'll try to get you somebody else, Roman Harper or somebody. And I was like, yeah, sure, no worries. Well, about 5 minutes later, towards the end of the afternoon, Peter was walking by me. And he looked over and he pointed at me and he's like, I know you. And I said, yep, Rob Brown, Greenville, South Carolina. And he goes, we met at the Army-Navy game, didn't we? And I said, yes, sir, we did. It was like 12, 13, 14 years ago, but we met at the Army-Navy game. In fact, 2 of them, we did one in Washington, D.C. and one in Philadelphia. And he goes, I follow you on Twitter. And I said, you absolutely do. He goes, I see your takes. He said, I think you're doing a great job. And I said, well, man, listen, I know you're kind of out of time here, but if you get a few minutes tomorrow or the day after. I know your schedule's kind of set, but if you get even 5 minutes, I'd love to have you on the show just to, old time's sake, reconnect. Because before Peter went to the SEC Network, he was doing sports talk radio in San Antonio. And he used to come on my show back in the day all the time. And once he got to the net, obviously, it got a little tougher to book him on the show. But he looked at the young lady who was handling, and he goes, figure out when we can talk to him. And she was like, okay. And then they came back at about 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. I was kind of wrapping up, and he walked back over, and he goes, hey, I got about 8 minutes. Does that work? And I was like, yeah, for sure. So we got Peter Burns, which was great. And then one more quick story segueing off of that, because we got Peter to talk a lot about. He has, and I'll say this, glowing praise and review for Shane Beamer. Little hesitant on Lenore Sellers, glowing reviews of Shane Beamer. And he said something interesting to me too. He said, I'm enjoying these SEC Media Days. I enjoy them every year. He said, I'm enjoying the SEC Media Days this year because it's the first time since 2019 that it feels normal. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he goes, well, think about it. In 2020, we had COVID. In 2021, we had the transfer portal. In 2022, we had NIL. In 2023, we had conference expansion. And in 2024, we had the House settlement, conference expansion, and NIL. And that's all we talked about for 4 days. He said, but COVID's gone, or at least in the way that it impacted college football. He said, COVID's gone. NIL is just a thing now. We have the House settlement officials, so that's kind of set the bars and the parameters we're playing in. Nobody's talking about conference expansion. Texas and Oklahoma have now played a year in the SEC, so they're not noobs anymore. He said all the things that have kind of detracted and derailed football conversation the last 4 years, all those things are at least for now either settled and over with or on the back burner. And that makes it feel like football. And I said, that's a great take. I really like that. So we got done with Peter Burns, and I'll give you one more quick story about an interview I'm going to cut later on today. I got up after we were done with Pete, and Peter walked away, and I was walking back over to the media workroom to go grab myself my 10th Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. Because, Lonzo, if somebody offers you a cooler full of Dr. Pepper Zero Sugars, go bananas.
I know, right?
Go off, King. All right.
Nectar of the gods.
Go off, King. So I walked down there to get sugar-free Dr. Pepper number, whatever I was on that day. I'm also drinking plenty of water, Mom. Leave me alone, okay? So, not my actual mom. That was just a joke. I walked down to the break room, and as I was coming back, there was a guy leaned up. There's these big columns outside of the media break room. And there's a guy leaned up, and I looked over, and I was like, damn. That guy is wildly familiar to me. And I just kind of stood there for a second and analyzed. And I realized that the guy that I was looking at, Lonzo, was legendary Florida Gator quarterback Danny Wuerffel. Now, Danny Wuerffel comes from Fort Walton Beach, Florida. The 1996 Heisman Trophy winner comes from my hometown. In fact, he played I attended Choctawhatchee High School in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Go Big Green. Danny Wuerffel quarterbacked our main rival, Fort Walton Beach High School. And so just as kind of like an aside, because it's Danny Wuerffel. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. For the love of the football gods, Danny Wuerffel has a trophy and award named after him that they give away at the College Football Awards every year. And a fun little tidbit, the organization that runs that, I've talked about it before, the All Sports Association, I was a member. I was one of the first people to actually see the first Wuerffel trophy. I was working for the guy who at the time was the president of that organization. And so I walked up to him, and my high school, who was his rival, is the Big Green Indians. I walked over to Danny Wuerffel, and I said, Mr. Wuerffel, go Big Green. Because it's only been 40 years since Danny Wuerffel played high school football. But if you drop a high school smack talk line on a dude who was that dude for his high school, I don't care if Danny Wuerffel is he's got to be in his early 50s now. I don't care if he's 51 years old. It's going to slap. So I said, Danny Wuerffel, I said, Mr. Wuerffel, my name is Rob Brown. I said, I'm from Greenville, South Carolina, but I grew up in the Florida Panhandle. Go Big Green. And he looks at me, and he was going to shake my hand. And when I said, go Big Green, Lonzo, he pulled his hand back away from me. And I was like, he's still in there. So anyway, talked to Danny Wuerffel for a couple minutes, told him a little bit about my connection to his award, the Wuerffel Trophy back in the day. Talked to him a little bit about the time that I spent watching. I watched Danny Wuerffel in high school when I was legitimately 5-6 years old. And so I was kind of sharing stories with him, and I said, I'd love to get you on the show tomorrow. And he put me over to his agent, and he said, find a way to get this guy some time. So some point today, we will be talking to an absolute legend, a college football Hall of Famer. We will be talking to the 1996 Heisman Trophy winner, the 1996 national champion, the 1996 Maxwell Award winner, and two-year New Orleans Saint, Danny Werfel. Later on this afternoon, we'll have that interview for you tomorrow. Guys, it is college football season. Officially, thoroughly, it started on Monday. We are in the thick of it. When we come back here in just a minute, we'll address some of the talking points we got out of yesterday's Southeastern Conference Media Days. We will set you up for interviews with Peter Burns. We'll set you up with an interview with the president of the College Football Hall of Fame I did yesterday, David Nuno from TexAgs.com, the world's strongest man, WWE star Mark Henry, and more, and tell you what you got coming up today on the Rob Brown Show live from SEC Media Days in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the Fan Upstate.
Live from SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, you're listening to a special edition of Love the savings on the Fan Upstate.
The Rob Brown Show live from the College Football Hall of Fame here in Atlanta, Georgia for SEC Media Days, day number 3 of 4. And what a tremendous time we are having. Let me tell you what we got coming up for you on the show. 1 hour from right now, there has been something that has been building on this show for 5 years now. Back in the year 2020, you may all remember that we had the COVID lockdowns. And during the COVID lockdown, the NBA placed its players in a bubble. They went down to Orlando, Florida, and they played a shortened NBA season inside of the bubble. It wasn't great, but it was better than nothing. Well, there was a basketball player back in the day who broke and got in a bit of a bit of a issue, bit of a circumstance with the NBA. He popped the bubble. He left the bubble. And after he left the bubble, once he got found out and once he got suspended and had to go through their testing protocol to be allowed back into the bubble and yada, 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 Lou Williams went on a podcast at the time. And they said, why'd you pop the bubble, dog? Why'd you take the risk? And Lou Williams said, because I wanted to get wings from Magic City. Now, Magic City is a gentleman's club here in Atlanta, Georgia. It is a very famous gentleman's club here in Atlanta, Georgia. It is well known because it is where basically every celebrity, football players, basketball players, hip-hop artists, rock and roll artists, every celebrity who comes to this town, whether they are playing games or whether they are performing concerts or whatever, every celebrity that comes to this town that wants to go out, they end their night at Magic City. But that is not why Lemon Pepper Lou went. Lou Williams did not go to Magic City to see the ladies. He went because he swore up and down the hall that they had lemon pepper wings that were out of this world. He said, when asked, why would you risk an NBA paycheck to go get a bucket of wings? He said, these are the best wings on planet Earth. They are wings that I will fight people over, and I just wanted wings. Since then, Magic City's wings have blown up. And for 5 years now, I have been saying I'm going to get Lemon Pepper Lou's wings from Magic City. And it just hasn't happened. It just hasn't happened. It's because usually when I'm in Atlanta, I'm passing through. Magic City's kind of out of the way. It also isn't open, obviously, until a little bit later in the daytime. So it's normally not open when I'm driving through. And outside of my bachelor party last year, I haven't really spent time in Atlanta. I've maybe come over for a day game or maybe I come over for a Braves game, but I haven't really spent time in Atlanta. Yesterday afternoon, I left here. I went back to the hotel. I dropped off my stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, I can now tell you, I have officially purchased and consumed Lemon Pepper Lou's lemon pepper wings from Magic City in Atlanta, Georgia. And coming up in a little bit less than an hour, I am 1,000% going to review those wings for you here on the show. I am going to tell you if it was worth risking an NBA paycheck for Lou Williams to pop the COVID bubble to go get 5 years later. It's a timely story. I know I'm only 5 years out from when this happened, half a decade removed from that thing happening. But Lemon Pepper Lou did the best advertisement for anything that's ever been done in the history of advertisement of things. And last night I got the lemon pepper wings from Magic City, and I'm going to break and review those wings for you coming up in a little bit less than an hour from now. But before we get to any of that, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the things that went down yesterday. The first is, and I know that this is not necessarily a topic that is going to impact the Gamecocks of South Carolina, unless it does. Yesterday was Texas Day. Yesterday, Arch Manning was in the house. And I do think that it is fair to say Arch Manning is the biggest celebrity in college football coming into the 2025 season. There is more conversation about Arch Manning. There is more pin to Arch Manning. This is a Texas Longhorns football team that could sniff a natty last year, and they came up a little bit shy of doing so. A large part of the reason why, in my ever so humble yet frequently correct opinion,
would be the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Would be the Ohio State University. There ain't no doubt about it. But another big part of the reason was the play calling of Steve Sarkisian throughout the playoffs last year, and especially in that game against the Ohio State University, including a go-ahead opportunity for the Texas Longhorns where they ended up with a goal-to-go situation where a touchdown would have given them the lead. And I'm not going to say won them the game, but it would have really put Ohio State in a tough place. And instead of just power running the football 4 times, and instead of just taking Arch Manning, who is known for his power in running the football, and just dive bombing the goal line 4 times. I'm not even saying it would have scored. I'm saying it would have had a better chance of scoring than the end arounds that Steve Sarkisian called in that game. It is something that I have been harping on since it happened, that there is a group of college coaches that are very good, and that sometimes I have a hard time trusting them when a game of that magnitude is on the line. I have said this about Mario Cristobal at Miami many, many times. And all I need to go to is that Georgia Tech game against Miami. How many times have we talked about that game? And the reason we've talked about that game is because if you don't believe that coaches can lose a game just as easy as players can, that game proves you wrong. In that game, Miami has the football, less than a minute and a half to play. The game is effectively over. Take 3 knees. The absolute worst case scenario is that something bad happens, quarterback, I don't know, gets sacked before he can take a knee, clock rolls, maybe you got to punt to him on 4th down with 3 seconds left to play, and you set up an opportunity for them to pull off one of the biggest miracle touchdowns in college football history. But take the knee. And instead, with less than a minute and a half to play, Mario Cristobal decides, let's call a run play. Let's run the ball. Why? I don't know. It is July 15th. We are however many months out from that Georgia Tech victory, and I still don't know the answer to that question, mainly because there's not a good one if we're keeping it a buck. Steve Sarkisian is another guy that I think might be, capital M, might, underlined, italicized, might be. I think Steve Sarkisian might be one of the best developers of college football players, not in the SEC, in the country. I think Steve Sarkisian might be one of those coaches who just gets how to get the most out of guys. This is one of the reasons that so many people are in on Arch Manning as being an absolute dude this year for the Texas Longhorns. A belief that Arch Manning, who did play last year in packages, but not much, had a year to sit, had a year to learn, had a year to be developed by Steve Sarkisian, a great player developer coach. And obviously you add the Manning name, the pedigree, being coached up by Archie, being coached up by Pepe, being coached up by Eli, et cetera, et cetera. That's why Arch Manning is being considered a celebrity. And that is one of the reasons that I think Arch Manning is going to be good this year. Am I ready to say he should be the runaway Heisman Trophy favorite? No, I'm not there yet. But the interesting thing yesterday, as I was doing interviews throughout the course of the day, as I was being interviewed throughout the course of the day, as I was having conversations with every level broadcaster that is covering this conference this year, what I found interesting is the variety of opinions on Mark Henry, or excuse me, on, I said Mark Henry because I'm about to bring him up, on Arch Manning. A good chunk of people that are here said Arch Manning is absolutely a Heisman favorite. He is going to change the game for the Southeastern Conference. A good chunk of the people here said, I think he might be a little bit overrated. I brought up to a couple of people the fact that 2 weeks ago, Steve Spurrier said, hey, if Arch Manning's that good, why was he not playing last year? If he was that good, why could he not take Quinn Ewers' spot, especially when Quinn Ewers was allegedly a little banged up, not 100%? Why was Arch not taking that spot? And now the Texas apologist, and respect, that's the gig. The Texas apologist position is Quinn Ewers was an NFL draft pick. He was a good quarterback. And what you don't want to do, even if he is a little banged up, when you consider yourself a national championship frontrunner, as Texas was and did, you don't want to change up, even if the guy's not 100%, the chemistry, the timing, the organic relationship built between the quarterback and his offense. And if Quinn was only going to be banged up for a week or two, you didn't want to disrupt the offense. But saying everybody get comfortable with Arch, and then we're going to go back to Quinn, or we won't, but you got to develop this new chemistry, whatever. And that this was always the plan. Let him sit, let him develop, let him grow, let him get a little bit better. And maybe that's fair. And then there's another group of people that said, maybe we just say, oh, look, it's the next Manning and assume he's going to kick a bunch of ass. And we don't know that that's true or not. Mark Henry said to me yesterday, covering the Texas Longhorns for 1300 The Zone in Austin, Texas, he said, I'm telling you right now, Rob Brown, Arch Manning is going to be great. But I don't think it's going to be this year. I think it's going to be next year. Arch Manning is going to be a Heisman caliber player. But I don't think it's going to be this year. I think it's going to be next year. He said, I think we're going to be a running team this year. Power runs, off runs. I think there's a lot of great talent to help him grow at the wide receiver portal, even though we did lose Matt Golden and some of the other guys. I don't think Arch is going to be Heisman great this year. I think it'll be really good. I think it'll be Heisman great next year. And that's really interesting considering the pressure on Steve Sarkisian. We'll hear what Steve had to say about that later on in the show. We'll get some quotes from Arch Manning from yesterday as well. It's going to be busy today, y'all. I am Rob Brown, the great Lonzo, back in the network studio live from SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. It's a special edition of the Rob Brown Show presented by Ingles here on the Fan Upstate.
Live from SEC Media Days at the
Sports
College
Flash.
Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta.
Okay. I'll let you push the button, Lonzo. That's me. That's my bad. That's on me. Mark Henry, wild sitting here looking 2 feet over at a multi-time WWE champion that also had the greatest non-retirement ceremony of my lifetime. And then have him come over and go, hey, let's talk Texas football. But
it was a
that's
lovely salmon jacket.
Love it. I own that jacket, by the way. The same jacket. I own it. I have it. I got it because
not that particular jacket, because
not that jacket, because it would have swallowed me.
3 of you could fit
like
in that
like
jacket.
A parachute. But you know what? I didn't even say that to him. How did I not bring that up? If he's walking around here again today, I'm gonna be like, Mark Henry, I want you to not only understand that you're one of my favorite wrestlers of all time and an absolute icon in WWE, you are also a fashion leader, because I saw that exact same salmon jacket in a TJ Maxx one day and I bought it and got it tailored. All right. So like fashion forward leader is Mark Henry. But we talked to him about Texas yesterday. David Nuno of TexAgs.com, been covering the Southeastern Conference for north of 20 years. He is an Aggie, obviously. And I will tell all of you that I acknowledged and admitted to David Nuno, who not only covers the Texas A&M Aggies, but he is a big fan. I acknowledged to him yesterday that I occasionally refer to, and by occasionally I mean every time I talk about the Texas A&M Aggies, as a Colt. Mainly because it's funny. All right. It's amusing to me. And I will say that I do have, and this may shock some of you, I've got 4 or 5 people very close to me in my life who are Aggies. And I say the same thing to them, and they get mad about it every time. But most of the time, they take it in good nature. It's fun. It's a joke. Texas A&M's a Colt. LOL. Like it just is what it is. If you want to beat the allegations, I don't know what to tell you. You got a lot of work to do, Aggies. And by the way, I just had like 2 or 3 guys walking by like point and be like, yep, they are. So I'm just saying, I told David Nuno that to his face yesterday when we were sitting here doing our interview, and I'm going to play back for you David Nuno's response to me when I told, hey, you know that school that you cover in depth and you host this popular subscriber-based college football and sports broadcast that you cover this school and you work hand in hand with them? Yeah, I think they're a Colt. And we had a conversation that got a little bit heated about it. Like, it was fun. It was ha-ha jokey. And then I think I might have gone one too far with it for David. And he gave me a little bit back for it. So I'm going to play that for you coming up later on in the show. But there are a few more things that I wanted to get to. We talked here on the show yesterday, and I asked you all the question. I asked you Gamecock fans the question. And I'm going to get back to this for just a minute. We will not spend as much time on it today as we did yesterday. But I asked you guys the question yesterday to answer, to finish a thought that Shane Beamer had from day one of SEC Media Days. Of course, the Gamecocks, one of the first 2 teams that were on the schedule here. So I asked the question for you Gamecock fans to answer yesterday. In talking with Paul Feinbaum, Paul Feinbaum said to Shane Beamer yesterday, effectively, you guys can't win the SEC. So what are your expectations coming into this year? And Shane gave, and what I am fine with, what I thought was a very forward, blunt, and almost frustrated answer. Shane said back to Paul Feinbaum, we have everything we need on this roster to accomplish what we need to accomplish. But that's it. That's where he ended the sentence. He didn't say what that is. 10 wins, increase to 11 wins, make it to the SEC title game, make it to the playoffs, win a playoff game. He didn't say what it is. He just said we got everything we need on this roster to accomplish what we need to accomplish, but then he left it there. And I compared it to a politician who gets up on the stump trying to earn your vote, and he says, if you elect me to be your next governor, your next mayor, your next president, I promise you your life will be better. The next 4 years, you'll have everything you need for you and your family to be safe, secure, financially successful, and to live the American dream. And then they stop, and you go, okay, yeah, okay, but what is that, right? Like, what is that? Is it going to be lower taxes? Is it going to be tax credits? Are you going to roll out some sort of program? Are we going to clean energy? Are we going back to coal? Like what are your plans here? And they don't give you anything. I kind of got that same vibe of he's trying to use the political, and I don't have a problem with it. And part of the reason I don't have a problem with it, and this is something I tell people all the time, it's kind of an antithesis to what you are told growing up. I'm not saying don't set goals. Absolutely set goals. What I'm saying is don't tell other people what they are, because here's the reality. You're going to fail to meet a lot of your goals, and that's okay. The point of life and being the best you can be isn't reaching every goal. I'm good at this, I swear. The point of life is not reaching every goal. The point of life is when you come shy of reaching a goal, to reestablish, reevaluate, get better, and grind to get the next one. So I don't have a problem with Shane not saying what the goals are, because once you establish the goal line is set. This is the goal line. By your own definition, this is the goal line. Whereas if you don't say what the goal is, you put to borrow an expression from common vernacular, you put wheels on the goalpost and you can move the goalpost. So you can say, we have everything on this roster we need to meet the goal. And if the Gamecocks go 8-4 this year, Shane can go, that was our goal. And if they go 10-2, he can go, that was our goal. And if they go 11-1, he can go, we actually surpassed our goal. And that's well and good. I got no issue with it. But I do think it is still fair for Gamecock fans. I think it is fair for Gamecock fans to have a goal of their own, to say, this is what I want to see. So yesterday on the show, I put out there, Gamecock fans, I want to know what that goal is for you this year. What is the acceptable baseline for you? If we get to this mark, fine. If we go above that mark, huzzah. If we come shy of this mark, maybe we need to reevaluate. And obviously, there's variables that have to be accounted for. I told Diesel and Cole Bryson yesterday on Wire to Wire. One of the things that drives me the absolute craziest about sports media, of which I am a part, is how many people try to take a very convoluted and nuanced situation that has a gradient of possibilities and distill it down to black and white, left, right, up, down. There are only two possible realities, and we're going to fight about which one's the better one, instead of being openly honest and saying, it's a tough conversation to take a season like this and to actually say, let's contextualize it. Let's say, here's the gradient of, here's national championship over here, and here's 5-7 over here, and there's a realm of possibilities in the middle, and all of them, based on other factors outside of your program, may impact whether those possibilities are good or bad. So I asked Gamecock fans yesterday, give me your expectations. What is expectation? And I compiled the responses that I got yesterday, and I got a handful of them. So I'm going to read these. I got about 8 yesterday that I liked, about 8 that made the cut that I wanted to bring to the show, just to kind of establish where the Gamecock fans seem to be and establish where the fans' expectations for everything are. And I want your reaction to them, Lonzo. I'll give you mine. Here are some of the better text and tweets that I got yesterday when I asked Gamecock fans your expectations. Trey from Simpsonville texted in. He said, Rob, if we can hit 9-3 this year and stay competitive in every SEC game, I will call it a success. We've been rebuilding the foundation for a few seasons now. This needs to be the year that we turn the corner. Fair, unfair?
I don't know that 9-3 is turning the corner.
Yeah, because you got 10 last year. And I would make the argument it's a tougher schedule. Honestly, I believe it's a tougher schedule this year than last year with it being backloaded. But I would also say this is where the nuance of that conversation comes in. I would also say you got Lenora Sellers. That could, not saying will, could, capital C, italicized, bold on the line, could be South Carolina's Cam Newton, even if it's only for a year. On the flip side, I think the Southeastern Conference is better this year. Depth conference, like 1 through 8, all good teams. So 9-3 could genuinely be, for me, I could have the same feeling about 9-3 this year that I had about 10-2 last year. 9-3. It depends on the 3 and how they. If you lose to Alabama at home and it's a 1-point loss and it's on the last play of the game or whatever, there is a chance I look and I go, that's a good Bama team. It's not your worst loss.
Yeah, but you look at what you did against Alabama last year and realize that maybe if you're at home, you win that game.
Yeah, but I love the quote Nick Barrett had, the defensive lineman, a couple days ago when he said, "This ain't 2024 part 2. This is 2025.1." And I agree with the take.
You know what? Players say that, but you've been a player. You still remember, and you want to get that back. You absolutely do. That gives you a little something extra to make sure that it doesn't happen again this year.
Without a doubt. But I think the other aspect of that is that has to be kept in consideration. You expect to be better this year. So does Alabama. Like it's not a one-sided affair where Alabama, you're playing the 2024 Alabama squad again. They expect to be better. Let me give you one or two more before we take a break. I'm going to read a few more of these later on in the show. Cassie and Travelers Rest said, "I'm not expecting us to win the SEC, but if we're not in the conversation in November, that's a disappointment. Beamer's got the talent now. Let's go 10-2 and make some noise." I think that is very fair. That is one of the things I've talked about a number of times is it's about establishing, because you spent 4 years culture building. The fans are excited. The players are excited. And the recruiting is good because the recruits are excited. But at some point, you got to be able to say, we're going to translate the excitement, the hype into wins. And I think taking a 10-win season last year, and I would add one little addendum to that. Lonzo, I would say 10-2 as a regular season record, not with a bowl win to get to 10. I think 10-2 regular season is what I'm looking for.
Agreed. And a victory at the end would be icing.
Yep. Big Shane from Fountain Inn sent me a message yesterday. He said, "Rob, it's time to stop hoping and start expecting. 11-1 is the ceiling, but I'm holding out for 10 wins and a real shot at an SEC title game appearance." Quote, "No more moral victories." I don't have an issue with Big Shane either. I think that's fair too. I think that's fair. Hope for 11-1. Set 10-2 as the floor. No more moral victories. Real quick, Jacob is in the Facebook stream. He said the USC bar should be to make the playoffs. Less than that, it is a failure. A good season would be either attending the SEC championship or winning in the first round of the playoffs. A great season is either winning the SEC or winning multiple games in the playoffs. I agree, but I think maybe you're like one step too far, Jacob, and I'm going to address your comments. You can send me your comments on the Hub City Spartanburger text line at 844-326-3663. 844-326-3663 is the number. What is your response to that question? What's the goal? What's the goal where you say, this is successful, this is not? And more importantly, what do you want to achieve in terms of not just wins and losses, but in growth of the program? We'll address this more. We got David Nuno of TexAds.com coming up. Mark Henry, got an interview with him, and the president of the College Football Hall of Fame, all coming up on the show today. I am Rob Brown, live at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. It's the Rob Brown Show, presented by Ingles, here on the Fan Upstate.
Time for a Sports Flash. The National League claimed last night's All-Star game and a home run derby swing-off, whatever that is. The NL led 6-0 at one point. I hadn't heard of it before this, but the AL tied it up in the ninth, leading to the tiebreaker where players from each team got 3 swings and the homers were tallied. Philadelphia's Kyle Schwarber hit 3 in 3 pitches to give the NL a 4-3 win. Caitlin Clark was pulled from last night's 85-77 Fever win over the Sun with an apparent groin injury in the final minute of the game. Fever coach Stephanie White said Clark felt something in her groin and that she would be further evaluated today. Jets cornerback Sauce Gardner is now the highest paid defensive back in the NFL after signing a 4-year, $120.4 million deal. Just 24 hours after the Jets extended receiver Garrett Wilson's, Gardner's contract includes $85.63 million.
Up to the minute upstate traffic. Spartanburg, eastbound I.
State, 97.7 FM, Greenville, South Carolina, 97.1 FM in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and for free all around the world on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. Grab it, put it on your cell phone, your tablet, your laptop, your television, your whatever, and you can listen to the show all 4 hours, all 5 days of the week. You can listen to the fine programming here on the Infinity Sports Network and the Fan Upstate. The Rob Brown Show, 6 till 10 a.m. Righter Than You with Bill Ryder from 10 to noon. The Rich Eisen Show from noon to 3. And then, of course, our other local show, Wire to Wire, with Cole Bryson and Diesel from 3 to 7 p.m. Make sure you grab that Odyssey app. And do not forget, I was going to do it this week, but obviously with Media Days, it has been absolute chaos around here. Starting next week, I'm going to have a bumper, a sounder for it, and everything. Starting next week, we will have our Ray Memorial Hotline take of the week. And I think we're going to do it on Thursdays, but we are going to start next week the Ray Memorial Hotline take of the week. You are going to have the opportunity from Friday till the next Wednesday night to go on the Odyssey app, AUDACY, to go on the Odyssey app, to go to the Fan Upstate page, to click the leave a voice message button and record an up to 60-second voice message. It can be about anything. You can say anything that you want, whether it is noon o'clock in the daytime and you're on your lunch break and have a take, or whether it is 2:30 in the morning and you've been inspired by 7 too many Jack and Cokes and you got a sports breakdown or life breakdown. You can go to the Odyssey app, AUDACY. Go to the Fan Upstate page, click on the leave a voice note button, leave up to a 60-second message, and starting a week from tomorrow, on Thursdays, we will have the Ray Memorial Hotline take of the week. I reserve the right to change the name because I do like that. It's got a little flow, but like I might come up with something that's a little more jingly.
I don't know. Your memory on Thursdays is not very good.
Listen, it's been wild. My man hating ass Mario left us. Lulu Kessin's on vacation. Rashad Beard left the Fridays. It threw my whole Thursday world into flux. And now we have to kind of figure it out. So I'm going to fill the space because we know and have never once forgotten that at 9:20 on Thursdays, we have Fight Club with Great One Lonzo.
Not today, though. I mean, not tomorrow.
Certainly not today because today is Wednesday.
Yeah, not tomorrow.
We will push
Fight not next week either. So, I mean, you know.
Oh, because we're at ACC Media Days.
Yeah.
Fight Club will be on Fridays this week and next week. All right, just go ahead and put that out there.
Because apparently wrestling doesn't exist during football season.
I mean, it is.
I mean, there's that. Yeah.
I get
it.
We
can talk about baseball. We can talk about WNBA.
Even though, by the way, I don't know if you caught this because it was very late at night, so I didn't send you the text. But when Cal, the big dumper, Raleigh won the home run derby on Monday, and by the way, we're going to talk about the All-Star game here in a minute because the last 2 nights have had so much fun. All right, so we're going to get to that in a minute. But after Cal, the big Raleigh dumper, won the home run derby, which was already a very cool story. His dad was throwing in pitches. His little brother was the catcher, hyping him up behind the plate. It was an absolute slugfest. After it was over, the big dumper is standing on the field. And he's talking to Jeff Passan from ESPN. Passan's like, he's been working this All-Star game. And Passan's kind of like developing a little personality, which I absolutely love out of the kid. So Jeff Passan's out there, and he's asking Cal Raleigh questions, and he's asking his dad questions, he's asking little brother question. And he goes back to Cal for what is very clearly like the last 1 or 2 questions before they end the interview. And he asked Cal Raleigh a question. And I will say, lovingly, as somebody who watched Cal Raleigh play his college ball, he played at Florida State. And when I was broadcasting down in Florida, I saw Cal Raleigh play at Florida State and in Jacksonville a couple of times when they got together with the Mighty Gators of Florida in the 3-game set that they play. Not a super media savvy. He's just kind of a dude, right? Like he's not, I was really, really honored to win the derby. Like he's not that guy. He's just kind of a low-key young guy that is like, yeah, no, it felt real cool, man. Like what a cool thing to do. So Passan asked him the last question, Lonzo, and he puts the mic in his face. And Cal, you've been here. You've done this a long time. You know how you'll ask them a question and you set them up to give you a great answer and they give you back like 3 or 4 words. And then they just kind of look at you and you're like, was that the end of it? Like, are you done with your answer? Should I start the next question? And you kind of have that minute of like, that was a real short answer. I kind of expected more and I don't really know what to do now. They had that moment. And as Jeff Passan's holding a mic to Cal Raleigh, who's not talking anymore, from the left side of the screen, in walks Cody Rhodes, for no reason, just walks in side of the profile, not like facing the camera, side profile, is standing there. Well, as Cody Rhodes walks in, thinking the interview's over, Passan asks Cal Raleigh another question and gives him the mic to answer it. Raleigh does give an answer. And so for legitimately 35, 40 seconds, there's Jeff Passan, there's Cal Raleigh, and then there's the side profile of Cody Rhodes holding a home run derby championship belt that he's presenting to Cal. And he just stands there. And I'm like, Cody, you're supposed to know your timing, buddy. That's your one job is to know your timing cue here. And Cody just stands there until Passan's done. But my favorite part is he hands Cal Raleigh the championship belt for winning the Derby. And I'm expecting Passan's going to be like, and here's WWE superstar and former world champion Cody Rhodes presenting a championship. Passan doesn't even acknowledge it. He just backs out of the screen. Cody hands him the belt. Cal shakes his hand, turns around. Now it's just Cody Rhodes standing there, and he just slides backwards out of the screen. And that's it. That was the whole appearance. It was freaking hilarious.
All right. If I recall, I believe Passan actually is a wrestling fan.
I believe Jeff Passan is.
Yeah. So
which makes it all the funnier that Cody Rhodes walks in, side profile, stands there 35 seconds. No one speaks to him. He hands the belt. Passan leaves, and Cody just slides back out of frame. I was like, buddy, that's the worst jobber performance I've seen out of a wrestler. Incredible. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 7:06 in the morning, which means it is time for us to tell you at least what we think are the top 3 sports stories in the world of sports. It's time for us to tell you what you're going to be talking about when you get to the office this morning. Settle down, respond to those passive-aggressive emails from the boss that you don't want to respond to, but it's the middle of the week. You have to. When you're done with that, though, you're going to walk down the hallway. You're going to go find Jeff from shipping. You're going to meet in the break room. You're going to stand around that water cooler just over in the dark corner of the break room where the boss can't see if he's making the rounds, and you're going to talk sports. And if you're going to talk sports with Jeff from shipping, you got to know what's going on. And if you got to know what's going on, you've come to the right place because we do this.
Are you ready for the playbook of the peculiar, the almanac of the absurd, and the encyclopedia of the extraordinary? Well, you better be, because we're diving headfirst into the 3 top stories that will have your coworker saying,
Yeah, he's going to hurt you, sir.
Your first bathroom break.
No.
Here we go.
Welcome to the water cooler cheat sheet on the Fan Upstate.
It is indeed the water cooler cheat sheet, the top 3 sports stories that you need to know before you get to the office this morning and start talking sports with your coworkers. When you do, this is what you're going to be talking about, people. Let us dive right in with item number 1. There are going to be people in Seattle, Washington today that are going to be very happy with what I am about to say. I assume there are also going to be people in Las Vegas, Nevada, who are going to be very happy with what I am about to say. And the reason for that is because those 2 spots are, I believe, the 2 most likely landing spots for expansion teams in the NBA. Now, that's been kicked around for a few years now. It is something that has been discussed and debated. Do we bring back the Seattle Supersonics? Does Las Vegas, who now have the Aces, they are now getting the A's in a couple of years. They've got the Raiders out of Oakland. Las Vegas is becoming a mecca for American professional sports. Now, I think it sucks for the players who go to Las Vegas because on one hand, you get to live in Las Vegas, which if you're young, dumb, impressionable, and have money, Las Vegas is an incredible city. If you're not into the nightlife, the glitz, the glamour, Las Vegas maybe not the best place in the world. More importantly, not a lot of homegrown fans in Las Vegas, but it is a traveling destination, one of the most traveled to professional sports outlets. However, they're not getting a team because they have a great stadium or a great fan base or any of that. They're getting a stadium and teams in Las Vegas because the way teams want to go there. And because people go there and they spend a buttload of money, teams in Las Vegas, though I don't have the financials in front of me, are probably going to make as much money from people coming to see them as they are from people that are in Las Vegas who go to games. Adam Silver, the commissioner of the National Basketball Association, is currently attending the Board of Governors meetings in Las Vegas, Nevada this week. And Adam Silver yesterday, though he was hesitant to provide details, did acknowledge that the NBA is looking into expansion and the debates behind the scenes are going on. Now, Silver did say, quote, "A lot of analysis needs to be done and nothing has been predetermined one way or another. And without any specific timeline, we're going to be as thorough as possible and look at all potential issues." Silver went on to add that a, quote, "consensus quickly formed that the league office should do the work and work with these particular committees in the board and present that analysis. We are now engaged in this in-depth analysis, something we were not prepared to do before. But beyond that, as I said, it's really day one of that analysis in terms of price, potential timeline. It's too early to say. And again, I think that also assumes the outcome of this analysis. It is a truly complicated issue." End quote. Silver said that the next step in the analysis, after finding out is it profitable in general, is to begin to look at specific markets and investigating the facilities in those markets and the, quote, "appetite," end quote, of sports fans in those markets. That's one reason I think Seattle will be a front runner. Folks in Seattle have wanted their beloved Supersonics back ever since they moved to OKC and became the Thunder. As a matter of fact, I was watching a really funny discussion the other day from on one of my social media feeds from a sports talk radio show in Seattle. And a caller called in and was like, "Hey, do we as Seattle fans, do we get to claim the Thunder championship as a Supersonics championship?" And the host was like, "I'd like to, because I'd like to say Seattle has a proxy title here, but absolutely not. They've been gone so long, and we can't sit here and cuss out the Thunder for leaving us and then try to take credit for the title." I respected that take. Anyway, I think Seattle is on that list. I also think Las Vegas is on that list as well. The last time the league expanded, 21 years ago, when the Charlotte Hornets were added after that franchise moved to New Orleans. Before that, the NBA added 6 teams in a 7-year span from 88 through 95, bringing a franchise back to Seattle to replace the Supersonics. Silver called Seattle a, quote, "incredible market," end quote. So I do think that they are in the mix. One more quick basketball story as an addendum here. Caitlin Clark left last night's 85-77 win over the Connecticut Sun at TD Garden because of an apparent groin injury that occurred in the final minute of the game. Indiana coach Stephanie White confirmed Clark, quote, "felt a little something in her groin," end quote, and that she would be evaluated to, quote, "see what happens from there," end quote. In the last minute of the game, Caitlin Clark completed a bounce pass to teammate Kelsey Mitchell for a layup with about 40 seconds left to go, and then immediately began to hold the inside of her right thigh. She walked over, banging her head against the stanchion next to the bench in apparent frustration. He was visibly emotional as she went to the fever bench, placing a towel over her head. Before this season, Clark had never sat out a game in her college or pro career due to injury, but WNBA season number 2 has been riddled by injuries. She has sat out so far 9 regular season games, 10 including the Commissioner's Cup final when the Fever knocked off the Lynx a couple of weeks ago. This is the most recent injury since her return from injury less than a week ago in a loss to the visiting Golden State Valkyries. So this is a tough spot for Caitlin Clark. Now the All-Star game is in jeopardy. The next half of the season is in jeopardy. And honestly, the Fever, who very much had title hopes, and Caitlin Clark, who had MVP hopes, all of those are in jeopardy now as well. We'll check in on this story later on in the week, but let's get to item number 2. I don't necessarily know that this is one that is going to impact the conference we are currently covering here in Atlanta, Georgia, the Southeastern Conference, but down the road, it might. The Pac-12 and Mountain West conferences are headed back to court after failing to reach a settlement in mediation over $55 million in poaching fees. The conferences failed to reach an agreement by yesterday's deadline in mediation that began back in May. The Pac-12 requested a hearing on the pending motion to dismiss on September 9th. The Pac-12, according to a statement released yesterday by the conference, said they remain committed to moving forward with legal action in response to the Mountain West attempt to impose so-called poaching penalties provisions we believe are unlawful and intend to obstruct our ability to act in the best interest of our student athletes. Now, this all comes from the fact that Colorado State, Utah State, San Diego State, Fresno State, and Boise State have all left the Mountain West to move over to the Pac-12. Well, there was a contract in place that said if a school leaves early and the Pac-12 absorbs those schools, they would owe $50 million for the first school, $10 million for the first team that left, and then $500 $100,000 for every additional team that left, on top of $17 million plus exit fees that each individual school was responsible for as a part of a different agreement. So the exit fees are still in play, but the poaching fee, which is that $10 million plus $500,000 for every other team, is still there. They say that adds up with the attorney's fees, et cetera, to around $55 million. The Pac-12 is arguing in front, or went to the mediator to say, look, that's too high, and those were unenforceable contracts. The Mountain West is going, no, they're not. Signed, sealed, delivered. I'm yours, baby. You owe us the cash. They went to mediation. They could not reach a settlement, and I'm not shocked by that, because while they had to go to the settlement hearing, the Mountain West is not going to say, well, just give us 20 and call it even. $55 million would be windfall for the Mountain West. For the Pac-12, it would be devastating. That is a huge chunk of money that would go away from a conference that went from maybe the most historic conference in college football to a conference that is now fighting for its existence as, forget a power conference, just a conference in general. And finally, let's get to item number 3. Last night, the 2025 Major League Baseball All-Star Game took place right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Featured the best 2 pitchers in the world on the mound as Tarek Skubal and Paul Skeens took to the bump. It included the first automatic ball strike system challenges in All-Star Game history. It included a 6-run comeback for the American League. And, as I heard Lonzo talk about in the Sports Flash, here's your answer, great one. It was the first time ever that we did not play extra innings. Instead, we went to a mini home run derby to determine the winner. Both the American League and National League sent batters to the plate. Each got 3 swings to hit as many dongs as they could. Whoever ended up with the most dongs collected would win the tiebreaker and the MLB All-Star Game. Well, it turned out that, and as a Braves fan, this destroys me as a person. Philadelphia Phillies slugger Kyle Schwarber became the hero. 3 swings, 3 big old dongs at a Truist Park yesterday. A 4-3 home run edge for the National League. They get the win. They get the victory over the American League last night. Schwarber was 0 for 2 with a walk during the 9 innings, becoming the first player to win the All-Star Game MVP without recording a hit in the game, as the home run derby is considered part of the contest. So Schwarber had a couple of good defensive plays, but also went yad multiple times in a mini derby. The tiebreaker used last night. It was established in 2022, but last night was the first time that it was utilized. Boone and Dave Roberts had to submit their list of participants and alternates to MLB before the game in case they needed to get there, which is why you did not see names like Aaron Judge batting for the American League. How in the world do you have Aaron Judge on this team and you don't put him on a home run derby team? I've seen a lot of dumb decisions in baseball this year. I'm a Braves fan. I have seen oodles of them not sending Aaron Judge to the dish for the American League. Listen, as a National League guy, cool, great. I don't really get into the AL, NL stuff. I don't really care with interleague play. Like, it's not the same as it used to be. But not sending Aaron Judge to the dish in a home run derby has got to be the most questionable decision I've seen in Major League Baseball this year. I want to talk about this, and I want to talk about it here in the next segment because, A, it's a little bit of a shorter segment. B, between the Derby on Monday and the All-Star Game last night, I mean it when I tell you, Major League Baseball has the best All-Star break in sports. It has the best, with the exception of NHL's Four Nations Face-Off that happened this year, which was beyond electric. But that is not every year, at least not yet. I hope it is one day. Beyond the Four Nations Face-Off, the regular NHL Star Game, it's fine. Skills competition, it's fine. The boys want to win, but they do the weird, like, divisional mini team. I'm not down with that. NFL All-Star Game, Pro Bowl, it's fun for me. I like seeing freak of nature do superhuman things on a flag football field, but, like, it ain't football. So it's fine. The NBA All-Star Game, they're scoring 190,000 points. It's fun to watch athletes, basketball players do basketball stuff that I couldn't do on a video game, but it's fine. The MLB All-Star Game the last 2 days has been the most fun I have had watching, again, because I'm a Braves fan. The MLB All-Star Game is the most fun, and Home Run Derby, most fun I've had watching baseball so far this year, and I want to talk a little bit about why it was successful and what we took away from it next. After that, David Nuno of TexagsLive.com joined us on the show yesterday. We talked a little Aggies. We talked a little South Carolina Gamecocks. We'll go behind enemy lines with David Nuno to wrap up this hour, Mark Henry in the next hour, and more as the Rob Brown Show rolls on. It's a special edition live from the College Football Hall of Fame, presented by Ingles. It's the Fan Upstate.
edition of The Rob Brown Show, powered by your local Ingles Market. Low prices, love the savings on the Fan Upstate.
It is the Rob Brown Show, live from the College Football Hall of Fame here in Atlanta, Georgia, for day number 3 of 4 of SEC Media Days, sponsored by our friends at Ingles Supermarket. Low prices, love the savings. We appreciate Ingles for being a phenomenal sponsor and helping us get here and pull off this event. Now, I have 2 things that I want to get here to, mainly because I have teased both of them, and as Lonzo will attest, we never tease anything on the show and then don't pay it off.
No, I mean, who would do that sort of thing?
That would be, unprofessional would be the kindest thing I could say about that.
Un-American.
Absolutely. So here's the 2 things I'd like to pay off. I would like to start with this. 5 years ago, we had the COVID lockdowns. 5 years ago, the NBA placed its entire league inside of a bubble down in Orlando, Florida. 5 years ago, you will remember a story that we talked about extensively on air when NBA player Lou Williams left the bubble and got caught. And when he left the bubble and got caught, he had to sit out for a couple of weeks. He had to go through COVID testing in order to be allowed back into the NBA bubble. Lou Williams, who was at that point a member of the Clippers, got into a little bit of heat for that as he, again, stepped out of the bubble, got in trouble, ended up having to sit out the first 2 seeding games of the 2019-20 season to meet his quarantine requirements. And a few weeks later, Lou Williams was asked, why'd you pop the bubble? Why did you leave? Why did you risk an NBA paycheck to do that? And Lou Williams gave what? To this day, and this is, I say it as if it is a joke. I mean it when I say I am not joking. I think Lou Williams may have pulled off the greatest advertisement for anything in the history of advertisements for anything. Lou Williams says, I left the bubble to go to the Magic City Gentlemen's Club in Atlanta, Georgia. And they said, oh, Lou, you do know that pictures of pretty ladies with minimal clothing on are available for free on the internet, correct? And Lou Williams said, oh, no. I didn't go for the gals. I didn't go for the ladies. I went because Magic City Gentlemen's Club in Atlanta, Georgia has the best wings on the planet. And then he went on to explain that the lemon pepper wings at Magic City Gentlemen's Club in Atlanta, Georgia are his go-to jam. And so for 5 years, Rob Brown has been talking about, I want to try the lemon pepper wings at Magic City Gentlemen's Club in Atlanta, Georgia. And I just haven't gotten yet the opportunity. I've been to Atlanta a number of times. Most times it was either like for a day, popping in, going to a Braves game, popping back over, or for some event technical difficulties there. I apologize for that. We got cut off, but I believe we are back up and running. So I was telling the story, and Lonzo, I don't know where I got cut off there because I just kind of kept going with my story until you called me.
Well, the thing is, you got cut off. You were still talking about Lou.
Okay.
You hadn't gotten to the part where you actually went to go get the wings.
All right. So yesterday after we got off the air at 6 o'clock, went back to the hotel, dropped off the gear, and a buddy of the show who I shan't name because I'm pretty sure he's good, but just in case, I shan't name, but a buddy of the show who is in town, a friend of mine on and off the air, obviously, was like, dude, you've been talking about these wings, like, shut up, let's go get the wings. So we met up and we went to Magic City, the Gentlemen's Club. Now you can order on their website, and they, as we pointed out, do have takeout. But I learned you do have to go in to get the takeout. So I did go into Magic City for just a brief minute, and it's everything I thought it was going to be. It's incredible. So we got the wings and we left, and we were going to another.
Wait. What's incredible?
It's
the inside of the place, or
I don't know how to describe it, other than to say it is both everything I thought it would be and nothing like what I thought it would be. I had in my head that it was going to be this like massive facility with like 10 different stages and, you know, lounges and VIP and all. And it wasn't. Like, it wasn't a very big place. It was great when I would say it was, for your sake, I would say it was like the size of maybe 2 or 3 average corporate buildings conference rooms. All right. And there was one big stage, one small stage off to the side, and that was pretty much it. Like chairs around it, bars, but they were like regular bar 4 tops. It was the perfect mix of like a gentleman's club that has NBA and NFL players as a clientele, but also a dive bar. It was perfect, right? Like if it was just a bar and not a gentleman's club, it's absolutely a bar I would go to on the regular to hang out and watch football. All right. So we went in, we got our wings, we left, and we took them. We were going to another bar. We were going to a dive bar that I was informed yesterday by a resident of Atlanta, Georgia, that Charles Barkley is a regular of this dive bar. It is a little bitty hole-in-the-wall dive bar that, like, the TVs are from the late 90s. Didn't care. I got told it's an incredible dive bar that is very generous with the beverages and very cheap compared to the other bars in Atlanta. So that's where we went. Well, we had the wings, so we literally, in what has been what was a fantastic evening, we sat in the back of a pickup truck on a tailgate eating lemon pepper wings from Magic City, as advertised by the great lemon pepper Lou Williams. Here's the review. So we've been waiting 5 years for this, and I have it. I want to start with the most important thing. They're not big meaty wings. I think I was kind of expecting big meaty wings. They're not. They're very. They're not small, but they're just not big wings. And I was kind of a little disappointed until I figured out why. They do have lemon pepper seasoning on them, but here's why they're so good, Great One. They've been called lemon pepper wings. That is a misnomer. They are lemon pepper barbecue wings. So they actually have a lemon pepper barbecue sauce that they drizzle on top of these wings. And when I tell you, and I said this to our buddy of the show, when I tell you that, never once, and you know me, I like to cook, and on top of that, when I cook, I like to experiment. I consider recipes more guidelines than rules, okay? I never once thought to put lemon pepper and barbecue sauce together. Like, never crossed my mind. And now that I've tried it, I'm like, I can't believe I never thought of this.
What kind of barbecue was it, though? Was it ketchup-based barbecue?
It was. I don't really know, because the power in the flavor, the lemon pepper kind of cut through the barbecue sauce in a real good way. Like, it was a traditional barbecue sauce, but the lemon pepper cut through it in a way that both of those tastes were present, but they mixed perfectly. It was just a classic barbecue sauce with lemon pepper put into it, and it was fantastic. Definition of finger looking good, all right? Because I quite literally licked my fingers when I was done with the wings. They were not big meaty wings. They were pretty average, run-of-the-mill bar wings with a lemon pepper barbecue sauce drizzle on the top of that. Here's what they got right. And as soon as I ate wing number one, I said, I get it, Lou Williams. Here's what they got right. The way that they flash fry these wings, the exterior of the wing, the skin of the wing, was a perfect crispy texture. All right. A lot of people screw this up because either they over fry the wing to get a crispy exterior and they end up overcooking the meat on the inside so the meat's a little dry, or they end up cooking the meat on the inside to a very good kind of, I don't say fall off the bone, but fall off the bone consistency. But it ends up making the skin on the outside have kind of a moist, not crispy consistency. They nailed it, dude. The skin had a perfect crispy texture to it. The meat on these wings was perfect. It was perfect. So 4 wings that weren't quite as big as I had hoped they were going to be. They were a bit undersized, not awful, not like I felt ripped off. It was for the lemon pepper. And by the way, the flavor is lemon pepper, or Lou's lemon pepper barbecue. They literally named it after him after that. It was $15 for 10 wings and fries. That's a pretty good deal. And even though they were maybe a little undersized for $15, the lemon pepper barbecue sauce they put on it absolutely made up for it. Perfect crispy texture. The meat was perfectly cooked. When I got through, I had 5. Buddy of the show had 5. When I got through my 5 wings, Zoe, I gave the best compliment that I can give to any chef or any cook or anybody who makes food, the best compliment I can give to a meal. When we got done, because we were sitting on the tailgate of a pickup truck, so I didn't have like a chair, I leaned over onto the bed of the truck, great one, and I just went, whew. Like that's the best response you can get to a meal, right? It's just somebody leaning back and going, whew, with a clean plate in front of them. Perfect texture of both the skin and the meat. The lemon pepper barbecue sauce was I'm going to say, I hesitate anytime I talk about anything to say, oh, this was the best blank that I've ever had in my life. Because ordinarily when I do that, I end up at some point circling back around and being like, oh, no, actually, I forgot about this other thing. So I will put it this way. I am going to say that I am comfortable saying, great one, these wings were inside of the top 3 wings I've ever had in my life. Inside.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you don't think that expectations may have heightened the taste?
I had that conversation on the way to get them. I was like, let me tell you, buddy of the show, let me tell you what I'm afraid of. There have been very few things in my life that I have waited 5 years for. Very few things. I dated my wife. Lived with my wife for 4 years and then proposed. We got married going towards our 5th year together. I didn't wait 5 years to marry my wife. I, with the exception of my very first radio station when I was a youth, this place is the second job I've ever kept for 5 years or more. I don't wait for things for 5 years. Never have. I talked about these wings for 5 years, and I was afraid that I may have talked up Lemon Pepper Lou's wings for 5 years to a point where they could have been the best wings of all time, but the expectations were so high that they would be impossible to meet. We've had this conversation about other things, like movies, right? When we know a movie's coming, the Superman movie, we knew that movie was coming, and we were excited about it, but we only knew that movie was coming for like 2 years. And I still had that concern of like, have I built this thing up in my head under James Gunn's direction that it's just not going to have the capability to live up to it? I've been waiting on these Lemon Pepper Lou wings for 5 years. And I said, I'm concerned that maybe I built them up in my head, in my imagination, to a level that they could not attain no matter how good they were. And I will say, Greg, that they may not have gotten to what I would have said were perfect. They could have been bigger. They could have been meatier. Outside of that, in terms of the sauce, the lemon pepper barbecue combination, which again, I've been cooking for my entire life, never once thought mix lemon pepper and barbecue. Not only am I going to do that, On Friday night, I have already told the wifey, stay home, I'm cooking dinner because I'm going to figure out the right mix to make that sauce, or at least as close as I can get to it. And I'm going to do it on salmon. I'm going to do it as a side. I'm going to put it on vegetables. I'm going to make lo mein, but I'm going to use that as the sauce instead of a traditional lo mein. I'm pumped about it. The sauce was perfect. The skin texture was perfect. The meat of the wing was perfect. It is hard to get skin and meat both right. Usually you get one or the other. They nailed both of them. The sauce was great. I had just one complaint, which was they were undersized. They were small wings. Outside of that, great one. We've been talking these wings up for 5 years. And the very first thing I did, and I haven't posted it because I got to edit it because I don't know, I'm not good enough to like make the TikTok videos on my phone. I have to send it to my computer and do the video editing because I'm 100 years old and technology passes me by. I filmed every step of this process. I got to make it into a review video. But when I did, I straight up after bite number one, first bite, I was like, yep, these hit the mark. I was like, Lou Williams, I don't know what I would risk an NBA 2-week paycheck for, but this is as close as I've ever said I would.
All right, so now you can check 2 things off your list: SEC Media Days and Lemon Pepper Lou's Wings. There you go.
Lemon Pepper Lou's Magic City Wings. Now, let me get to the second part of the thing that I wanted to talk about in the last segment before we were so rudely interrupted by technical difficulties, and that was last night's Major League Baseball All-Star Game and Monday night's Home Run Derby. I have a couple of takes. I want to start with what I wanted to get to yesterday, but we just ran out of time with the interviews that we got booked, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, do have one for you live coming up in the 9 o'clock hour. Elijah Campbell covers the South Carolina Gamecocks for 107.5 The Game in Columbia. He is as close to the team as you can get. Elijah Campbell's going to come by in the 9 o'clock hour. We'll talk some Gamecock football with him. Monday night, watched the Home Run Derby in the hotel room. I was tired. I slept like 4 hours Sunday night. I knew we had a big day. I had to get here very early on Monday morning. So I said, I'm going to stay at the crib. I'm going to stay at the hotel and watch the Derby. The Home Run Derby's fun. The Home Run Derby is excellent. I do have one take. Go back to the outs method. The pitch clock ain't it. All right? Now, it is for one reason, and that is presentation on baseball. And I know the moment that I developed that take. The moment I developed that take was when O'Neal Cruz of the Pittsburgh Pirates hit a home run that would be tallied at 517 feet. I have been going to Atlanta Braves baseball games at Truist Park for many years now, and I've seen a lot of balls that get hit to the chop house out in right field. I have seen in a regular season game one baseball get to the roof, and it didn't really go onto the roof. It kind of hit the front panel. That was, I believe, Matt Olson 2 years ago was the one guy I saw that happen. O'Neal Cruz hit a home run that went 517 feet. Not only did it land on the top of the roof of the chop house, it landed on the back of the top of the roof of the chop house. It was a moonshot. It was a problem. In person, that would have been maybe in person, the greatest home run I've ever watched hit, even if it wasn't a derby. On TV, it sucks. Because on TV, they showed the swing, they showed the ball from a camera behind the plate, and they pulled away from it like the second that it hit, and they turned, and they did not have time because of how far that baseball traveled. They did not have time to go from that home run landing, to show you how impressive it was, back to O'Neal Cruz for the next swing of the bat. That ball was in the air for so long that by the time they cut back, O'Neal Cruz had already swung and hit another ball, so they had to track that one in the air as it went out of the park. That's a problem. I want to see the swing, I want to see the contact, I want to see the fly, and I want to see the landing, and then I want to see a reset of that. But because they're on the pitch clock, and this is 1,000% a television-driven decision. Why? Because unfortunately, we have a breakneck fascination with speed. It's just got to be bang, ba-bang, 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 next one, next one, next one, next one, next one. That is why social media is social media. That's why Twitter's 280 characters and not 500. That is why Instagram Reels, videos, are 90 seconds or shorter. Because at 90 seconds, you risk losing the attention of people because the next endorphin hit is just one swipe of the phone screen away, right? This Major League Baseball Home Run Derby was set up for that. And I think it was bad. The Home Run Derby was excellent, But having to go bang, 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 next, it took away from the product that I used to love. Give the boys 10 outs, right? And somebody said to me yesterday when I had this take here, I was talking baseball with a couple of guys on the other side of the building, and they said, wait a minute, Rob, 10 outs, like that's not a lot. And I said, yeah, but you got to think about it. When you have a pitch limit and a pitch clock, guys got to swing at junk. They're not just swinging at grooved baseballs that are the pitch that they want. If you give them 10 outs with no pitch clock, no pitch count, no pitch clock, just 10 outs. Anything that you swing at and it doesn't go over the fence fair is an out. You give them that, now they're sitting on home run balls. And I'm willing to watch a guy take 2, 3, 4, 5 pitches before he takes a cut. I hate the pitch clock and pitch count method. Just give me 10 outs and let the boys go hit the groove balls. Last night's All-Star game. I'm an old hat baseball fan. I'm an old school baseball fan. I'm 40 years old. I've loved baseball. I'm not adverse to change. In fact, I like change and I like gimmicks. In 2022, Major League Baseball put into effect a new tiebreaker for the All-Star game. If we are tied at 9, and this is for pitchers, because you don't want to have to, you don't want your last guy have to go out there and throw more innings in an All-Star game. You ask the guys to go out there, and most of them are on a pitch count of like 20 to 25 pitches, absolute max. Clayton Kershaw got 2 outs, and he got yanked because he was at that pitch count. So they went with a mini home run derby. And I heard a lot of old guys last night complaining that it wasn't baseball. Guys, the All-Star break is supposed to be fun. The All-Star game is supposed to be fun. The All-Star event as a whole, from start to finish, top to bottom, left to right, is supposed to be fun. That was fun. Now, I will acknowledge, they didn't go 9th inning until like 11:20, 11:30 at night last night. And at that point, I had to leave the bar to come home because I knew I needed I got to at least be asleep by midnight, right? Even if this thing goes extra innings, I got to be up at midnight. I got to be up, get a little extra sleep. I can't get in until 5:30. I got to sleep in until 5 a.m. So I'm like, if I'm out at midnight, I got 5 hours. That's absolutely perfect. So I was listening old school on the radio. The MLB app was carrying the game. And I was listening to the home run derby. And it was electric. I was mad that I did not get to actually watch this. And I was saying, I'm a radio guy. I listen to games on the radio. When I watch Braves games at the house, I mute the television and I turn on the Braves radio broadcast to listen to radio. It's more, I'm a radio guy. The radio, I was mad I didn't get to watch TV. That's how much fun it was. The All-Star break is supposed to be fun. I think the All-Star game's perfect. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I got it confirmed last night. Of every major American sport, Major League Baseball's All-Star game is the best. Major League's All-Star break is the best. Major League's All-Star festivities are the best. From the village to the derby to the game, it is designed to be fun. I think they get a little carried away sometimes. I think, unfortunately, they have tried to tailor it to be a perfect television product and not to be a great baseball product. Even with that, I still think the All-Star game is the best All-Star game in sports. I think the All-Star Home Run Derby is the best non-game All-Star event in sports. And if you did not have fun the last 2 nights watching Major League Baseball, you just don't think baseball is fun. And that's okay. Baseball ain't for everybody. Nothing is for everybody. But if you didn't have a great time the last 2 nights, you're just not a baseball guy, because that was 2 of the most fun nights I've ever had. I stayed up late for both despite being in this outstanding event, SEC Media Days, of which we are in day 3 of 4 here at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. When we come back, I'm going to play you the interview we did yesterday with Peter Burns from the SEC Network. Peter spoke about the Aggies, about the Gamecocks. He talked about Lenoris. He talked about Shane Beamer, and he had very high praise for the head coach. I'll play that for you when we come back after Lonzo does an incredible sports flash.
It will be hawkish. The National League claimed last night's All-Star game in a home run derby swing-off. The NL led 6-0 at one point, but the AL tied it up in the 9th, leading to the tie. A 4-3 win, 3-3. That's pretty good. Caitlin Clark was pulled from last night's 85-77 Fever win over the Sun with an apparent groin injury in the final minute of the game. Fever coach Stephanie White said Clark felt something in her groin and that she would be evaluated today. Jets quarterback Sauce Gardner is now the highest paid defensive back in the NFL after signing a 4-year, $120.4 million deal just 24 hours after the Jets extended receiver Garrett Wilson. Gardner's contract includes $85.63 million guaranteed.
Up to the minute upstate traffic. Both north and southbound I-85 has the right lanes closed around Pelham Road. This area is currently experiencing minor to moderate delays. Spartanburg eastbound.
his very own pro day. But I don't like people opting out of the process.
Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson.
Turn on, leave on. Afternoons 3 to 7 on the Fan, Upstate.
Man, check this out.
You're on official Rob Brown lockdown.
Represents being real. Yeah.
Unfiltered sports talk. Manufactured locally for the Carolinas.
Lockdown.
This is the Rob Brown Show.
Get robbed.
Only on
The Fan, Upstate.
Hey, Big Daddy, how you doing?
Wonderful.
Good morning.
4 days, all about the Southeastern Conference and, of course, all about the Gamecocks of South Carolina. Speaking of the Gamecocks, yesterday got the opportunity to sit down with the SEC networks. Not yet, Peter Burns. Got a chance to sit down yesterday with Peter Burns of the SEC network and spend a few minutes with him. Love Peter, man. Just good people, good dude. I had the pleasure, the privilege, a number of years ago of meeting Peter Burns. And at the time, Peter Burns was a sports talk show host down in San Antonio, Texas. And I got the opportunity to meet Peter Burns last year. Scratch that. Got the opportunity to meet Peter Burns a number of years ago. And when I got the chance to meet Peter, we had some great conversation at an Army-Navy game back in the day. Yesterday, I put in for and got scheduled for a number of SEC network personalities. In fact, later on today, we'll be interviewing former NFL tight end Benjamin Watson, now with the SEC network. Very much looking forward to that. He was one of my favorite players as both a player and a New Orleans Saint. We'll sit down with him. Peter was one of the personalities that were confirmed. About halfway through the day yesterday, a young lady from the SEC Net came over and she said, look, we got a little wonky on the time. We may not be able to get you Peter today. Is it okay if we get him to you tomorrow or the day after that? I said, yeah. She said, it's not a guarantee. We're going to try to work you back in. But she was very apologetic. They were very kind. And again, I understand the SEC Network is, I think they're doing like 50 hours of live programming. And Peter is a big part of that. So between being on every show throughout the day, he's trying to hit as many radio stations as he can. It just happens at events like this. So we were getting towards the end of the day, and she came over. She said, we may not be able to get him to you. I'll try. Great, no worries. Well, a minute or two later, Peter was walking by, and he stopped, and he said, Rob Brown. And I said, yeah, man, great to meet you. And he said, when's the last time I saw you? You had to be 14 years ago. Yeah. He said, I still follow you on Twitter. I still see your takes. I still see your videos. You're doing great work. I said, thank you very much. And he looked at the young lady that was acting as handler in that moment for him. And he said, make sure you find some time for this guy. I want to sit down. And she said, done. So yesterday, late afternoon, towards the end of the day, around 6 o'clock or so, they came back over. I usually try to get out of here. I guess it was about 5:30. I've been trying to get out of here. Usually everything's wrapped up around 5:30. I've been going back to the hotel room to cut up audio and all that. Fortunately, I stuck around a little bit later yesterday, knowing that I was going back to meet a buddy and go to Magic City and go to a bar to watch the All-Star game. It's like, all right, no rush. I just need enough time to drop off the bag. So Peter comes back and says, make sure we get some time. And she said, I got you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Rob Brown Show is on your radio. This is the Fan Upstate, and I would like to share that with you now if I can figure out how to properly do so. In fact, let me unmute. I think I got to unmute the site. I may actually have to run this through a different format, Lonzo. In fact, I think I'm going to, because what I thought was going to work playing it over StreamYard may not. Did you hear that a second ago when I started that?
I did not, but I should be able to play it from StreamYard.
To have our next guest on, because while the interactions have, let's see if we can get Peter Burns running here. If we can't hear, I'll put it into another format, and we will figure it out. But here is my conversation yesterday. Let me know if it works. Great one from the SEC Network. It was on your radio. This is the Fan Upstate, and I am actually really stoked to have our
It was a lot of fun, though.
It was, sometimes you just got to experiment. All right, let me see if this method will work. Great one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The Rob Brown Show is on your radio. This is the Fan Upstate, and I am actually really stoked to have our. While the interactions have been few and far between since then, I had the pleasure of meeting this young man, and I say young lovingly because
that's when it's been a long time ago.
It's been a long time. About a dozen plus years ago, I got the opportunity to meet Peter Burns, now with the SEC Network, at a USAA Army Navy game.
Yeah.
I believe that one was in Washington, D.C.
I think it was, yeah, and that was back when I was doing sports talk radio at San Antonio, and then I think I came back and did the Army Navy Bowl or the Army Navy game with them the other year in Philly when I was in Denver.
Yep,
but
I was there with you in that one.
The fact that we get all the way back here in SEC Media Days. And by the way, I just made my first trip to Greenville, South Carolina last year. I know I feel bad because our studios are right there in Charlotte.
Yep.
I was freaking blown away.
Isn't it the best?
Well, because we've always heard about it for SEC women's basketball tournament, but I always work in the men's tournament over in Nashville. And so I was like, all right, finally, I'm going to go. Went down there with a friend, and I was like, I got to come back. And it's so easy from Charlotte, so I'm all in. I'm Team Greenville.
And now you got a guy that knows the dive bars in Greenville, so holler at your boy, and we'll make it happen.
I'm in. As long as you know where the tabs are, where they're going, we're fine with that.
Hey, I'm sorry, you're on the you're on the SEC Network, buddy. I thought we were rolling with you. Peter Burns from the SEC Network here on the Rob Brown Show. How's life, partner? I know that this is a crazy week for you guys, but how's everything?
It's fun because it's kind of the unofficial, like, all right, get your mind right week.
Sure.
And this is a different year than we've ever had. I say this is the first time Media Days has felt kind of the normal since we had like 2019.
Yeah.
Because conference expansion, no one's talking about that right now. Texas and Oklahoma have already done a year here. The NIL thing is kind of chilled out a little bit because of the collectives, and now teams are hiring GM. So this is the first time, and I think in a long time, that we're actually talking about football on the field. And so, now, with that being said, that's one of my lines this week is like, we still don't know who the players are really. And I think a lot of the coaches at this point really know what their team is. They have a general idea, and that's what we try to figure out this week through the interviews and through our interactions.
It has been interesting, and not to go down the transfer portal path, because you're right. My producer and I, Alonzo, we've been saying for a hot minute now, today's the first day of football season. I guess yesterday, but this week's the first week of football. But there is this interesting thing we're discovering as we're talking to Shane Beamer and Kirby Smart, and we're talking to the guys that are playing defense. We had DQ Smith from South Carolina on.
That guy is huge, by the way.
That dude's a man. Definition. He said that one of the interesting things that's happening for defensive leaders like him and Nick Barrett is they're not just having to learn to ingratiate incoming high schoolers in there to learn college ball, but they're bringing guys from Florida State and Nebraska and these other schools that have a different college culture ingrained in them and trying to get them adapted into, especially when you have a school like South Carolina that's very culture oriented around Shane Beamer. That's kind of created this whole new dynamic these guys are having to address.
But that's why Shane has thrived in this environment where other coaches don't. Like, I think Shane, to his credit, is as good as anybody of just being like, hey, I'm just a real dude. And he has real dudes around him. And I remember vividly when Shane first took the job, and I've known him back for, a long time now. And I remember asking him, I was like, so what's your goal? Like, how do you do this? Like, it's South Carolina. It's not Alabama, or it's not Ohio State or Texas or, the brand name. So how do you do it? And he goes, here's the deal. He goes, I was just working for Kirby. And I remember vividly, he says, hey, I may not be able to get every 5-star, but I guarantee you there's a bunch of 3- and 4-star guys that with the right coaching that we can develop. And he goes, I'm gonna grab the best coaches that I can create more of a community around and than ever before. And I think that we saw that with Nick Saban at Alabama. He was great, but he burned out his coaches. You say the same thing about Kirby. Now Kirby has a lot of his boys on his roster, but Kirby works them to the bone. And I think for Shane's like, if you want a good balance of life, college football, and I think that's why last year was so successful, because when he goes in the transfer portal, he's not just taking anybody. He's taking the guys that fit. Even if they're a 2- or 3-star guy, there's a plan because this guy fits the culture of South Carolina football, and all of a sudden he finds a way to make it work, and that's why you see the season they had last year.
Tell you one of the things, just to get your reaction to it, that's really bothered me a lot from college football fans the last couple of years is there's this attitude that, oh, these players are just going to go to whoever strokes the biggest check or gives them the most NIL or the most rev share. And I'm not saying there are no dudes that is true about, but I also think when you look at a lot of these teams in this conference, and I absolutely put South Carolina kind of at the forefront of this, you'll see there's a lot of dudes who want to, they want to get paid. So do we all, right? But there's a lot of dudes that they want to be in the right place for them, whether it's as a man, as a student, as a football player. And I do think that Shane Beamer has done that. Do you think that that is enough to one day elevate South Carolina into that Georgia, Alabama top tier?
Yeah, I mean, because I don't know there's ever going to be a thing as a top tier any longer. I think now, obviously with the salary, quote unquote salary cap,
Sure.
everything's going to be fairly equal. But I mean, this is enough of a proven program that you can take a look at and you can still have a lot of collective money. But what you have to do is you have to show that you can get there and over and over and over again. And again, as long as those fans are showing up at Williams-Brice in the way that they do, and you have that, you cannot think and you go out there to 5 points and you just like, this is where I want to be. And so that's why, and I'll be honest with you, you cheer for the good guys in our sport. And I don't know if there's anybody that when you hang around, you'll see on the Netflix series that they'll release that first episode. There's a great scene of Lenore Seller and his family talking about this was the best place that he could have gone. Think about all the places he could have gone, and he chose to go play for Shane Beamer. That's awesome.
Speaking of Lenore's, this is a really interesting year for quarterbacks in this conference because you've got Gunnar Stockton in the story at Georgia, Arch Manning, and all the drama around him at Texas. You've got all these great quarterbacks, and Lenore's kind of feels like he's in that group. I was watching this kid walk around Monday. He looks like a rock star with just a gaggle of groupies following him. What is a realistic to you ceiling and floor expectation for Lenore Sellers this year?
I think it's tough to say Heisman Trophy guy, but I mean, you're talking about a first team, maybe second team All SEC dude, right? You know, that puts up the numbers. I mean, the thing is staying healthy. That's one of the reasons why he was a late commit to South Carolina is because, hey, he has to make sure that he stays healthy. We saw what happened in the LSU game where they didn't have him. So, again, sky is the limit for him, but he's just a good kid. Another one of those guys, Rob, that we just pull for here in this conference, top to bottom.
Without a doubt. Do you think, I've said a couple of times, as go Lenore's goes the Gamecocks, because he's just one of those special players. Is this a team that can threaten, not go to, not win, threaten an SEC title game appearance this year?
I'm going to say.
You're not hurting any feelings here, Peter.
No. I think that the ceiling for this team right now is 10-2. I'd say the floor of it is 6-6. I think it ultimately ends up being an 8-4 squad.
Is that good enough for the expectations around Shane Beamer, considering what they accomplished last year?
I think because you had so much talent last year, you're just like, all right, if we've elevated this program to where the floor is going to be 8-4, that is fantastic news. And so that's why I'm trying to, figure out what Shane's got this season, and he's not backing down from it. And I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. We weren't talking about South Carolina last year, and then sure enough, look at what happened.
Peter Burns from the SEC Network, kind enough to take a few minutes here on the Rob Brown Show. Now that you're a little more familiar with the GVL, brother, you got to come down. We'll show you around.
I know we got the dive bars. I'm ready to go, Rob.
We got the dive bars. Listen, I'm just saying, tell the boys you want to shift over to the women's tournament. It is electric.
I'm telling you, I'm like Alyssa Lang and me. We'll do it next year.
Done and done. We got to get you back on the show.
Love it.
Peter Burns from the SEC Network here on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. So there you go. Our conversation yesterday with the SEC Network's Peter Burns. Any takeaways from that for you, Lonzo, that jumped off the page at you?
Yeah, he did a thing that a lot of media won't do, and he said we got to wait to see what they have as far as players go. There's so much hype. This team's going to be this is going to be this, but in the end, they're not at training camp yet. So we don't know really what they have. And as he pointed out, the coaches do to a degree, but the media does not. And I thought that was very honest. And a lot of media members won't do that. They're too much into the hype, which they're supposed to be, especially if they're for a certain school. And I thought that was kind of cool.
I completely concur. In fact, I gave him credit for that after we were done and have said it a couple times. As a matter of fact, yesterday I bumped into Josh Pate of CBS Sports, and I told him the same thing. I said, I got to tell you, I appreciate that there are now not just a growing number of shows, but a growing number of talking heads in the sports media landscape that are willing to say, look, I think this, I think that, it is possible that, this is a possible outcome. Here's a ceiling, here's a floor, but aren't going to say, oh, this championship or bust. It's this or that. It's got to be this or it's got. I like that there are out of this a lot of nuanced takes, and I genuinely believe that Peter Burns is at the top of the game in terms of that, in terms of being intellectual about the takes, about being open, about we don't know yet. And I will say, and I don't think that this is unfair. I don't think it's a slight because it could be positive or negative. But I genuinely think in the Southeastern Conference, there are 2 or 3 teams that I think are question marks that we aren't going to know until it happens. I think the Florida Gators with DJ Lagway is in that group. We're going to be hearing from Billy Napier and DJ Lagway later on in SEC Media Days today. I think Florida is absolutely in that group. I don't know what this team is going to be at. I don't know if Lagway is a Heisman contender, or I don't know if he's a guy that just had a good run at the end of last year and is going to come in a little bit overhyped this year. I think Texas A&M is in that group. Mike Elko, you're number 2. David Nuno, who we're going to hear from coming up here in just a little while, he loves what Elko is doing, and he loves what these Aggies are right now. I don't know what they are, though, and I don't think we're going to know till we get on the field. I think it is fair to say, and it may be because of Lenora Sellers, great one. I don't think it's unfair to say the South Carolina Gamecocks might be the biggest question mark, because I do think that with Lenora Sellers, if he turns into what we all hope he turns into, I think they may have the highest ceiling of any of the teams that have a question mark. If Lenore's is indeed a Heisman Trophy finalist, as a lot of us are hopeful that he will be, I think that they genuinely could be not just a playoff threat, but they could be a team that backdoors their way in, shocks everybody, and makes it to Atlanta to end the season. On the flip side, I think Peter Burns is right. I think they could be a 6-6 team. If things fall apart, if the talent's not there, if they're way too caught up in culture and hype and don't execute well, it is absolutely possible that they are a 500 team fighting for bowl. I think they might be the biggest question mark in the Southeastern Conference, because with an elite caliber quarterback, if Lenore is that, I think they can compete with anybody. Maybe not everybody we give it out, but I think they can on any individual Saturday compete with everybody. But if Lenore's ain't it, and he can't elevate the guys around him, which is a concern that David Nuno is trying to make. We'll hear from David here in a few minutes. If he does not reach that level and elevate guys around him, they could be in a world of hurt and take a step back from last year, which would be problematic. We'll talk more about that coming up a little bit later on in the show. We will hear from David Nuno of TexAgs.com, one of my favorite SEC talking heads who's been covering the game for 20+ years. At the end, the last segment of this hour, we'll come back here in a minute. One more football stories to talk about on the Rock Around the live from the College Football Hall of Fame and SEC Media Days here on the Fan Up.
Live from SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, you're listening to a special edition of the Rob Brown Show, powered by your local Ingles Market. Low prices, love the savings on the Fan Upstate.
From the News Talk 98.9 WORD Weather Center, here's the Carolinas' most trusted forecast on the Fan Upstate. Few spotty showers and storms possible late today. Partial sunshine develops, high 90. Tonight, still chance for storms, low 73. Thursday, chance for storms, 91.
Okay.
Friday, chance for storms, 94. And chance for storms still for the weekend.
No.
I'm meteorologist Jennifer
And
Leacheats
I'll be
on
back.
the Fan Upstate. Currently, it's 77.
twice so far this week. And your answers are still welcome. We will take them throughout the rest of the show today. I do have coming up later this morning, we are going to be joined by Elijah Campbell, who covers the Gamecocks for 107.5 The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. He is here as well. We're going to talk a little Gamecock football with Elijah Campbell coming up in the next hour of the show. But you guys, want you on the Hub City Spartanburger text line, 844-326-3663. The answer I'm looking for from Gamecock fans is this. On Monday, South Carolina Day, early in the morning, Shane Beamer was on the SEC Network with Paul Feinbaum. And Paul, being the wordsmith that he is, effectively said to Shane, without directly saying to Shane, South Carolina cannot win the SEC. So what can you do? And Shane Beamer responded by saying, we have everything on this roster that we need to do everything we want to do. But he ended it there. He did not add anything to that. He did not say what we want to do. He did not say what it is. And so I've asked Gamecock fans, since Shane did not say what it is, I've asked Gamecock fans, what is it to you? What is the mark? What is the bar? What is the minimum that you would say successful season? Is it 9-3 like it was? Is it 10-2? Is it 11-1? Is it an SEC championship game appearance? Is it make the playoffs? Is it make the playoffs and win a game? Is it make the playoffs and win 2 games? Is it intangible? Is it I want to end the year and be able to say that we were this, or I saw this, or it was this growth, or it was a fall off in this negative aspect? What is it that you would say Shane Beamer can say they were successful? And I asked you guys to text the radio broadcast with your answers, and I've gotten a handful of them that we have read so far on the show. And I got a couple more that I would like to give to you, and then our buddy Joey B has chimed in on the live stream, which you can watch the live stream as well by going to facebook.com/thefanupstate, the Fan Upstate on YouTube, the Fan Upstate on Twitter, or the Rob Brown Show on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Twitch. I have asked you guys the last couple of days to give us your thoughts, and I've been collecting, whether it is via email, Twitter, or the text line, I have been collecting your responses. Here are a few of them. I'm going to give you a couple, and then Lonzo and I are going to react to them. I'll read you 2 that we already reacted to back in hour number 1. You can go back and listen to that hour on demand when the show is over at thefanupstate.com. Go to the podcast section at the top of the page. Drop it down to the Rob Brown Show, and you can listen to each individual hour or download the entire show in its entirety, edited for time, and listen at your leisure. Trey from Simpsonville texted the show. He said, Rob, if we can hit 9-3 this year and stay competitive in every SEC game, I'll call it a success. We've been rebuilding the foundation for a few seasons now. This needs to be the year we can turn the corner. Cassie in Travelers Rest texted the show. She said, I'm not expecting us to win the SEC, but if we're not in the conversation in November, that's a disappointment. Beamer's got the talent now. Let's go 10-2 and make some noise. Mike D. in Greer sent us a message earlier this week. He said, Rob, all I want is progress. Show me we're closing the gap on Texas and Georgia. Give me a strong 9-3 and a bowl win, and I'm on board. Big Shane from Fountain Inn said, Rob, it's time to stop hoping and start expecting. 11-1 is the ceiling, but I'm holding out for 10 wins and a real shot at an SEC championship appearance. No more moral victories. I'm honestly good with that. Honestly, I'm good with that. The concept of no more moral victories. Now, I do want to say, I don't think last year's 9-3 was a moral victory. I don't think last year missing the SEC championship game by effectively one game, especially when you lost the Alabama game the way you lost it because you stepped on your own foot, especially because you lost the LSU game because, yeah, I'm at this point just willing to be that guy. because you had it ripped away from you by some poor officiating down the stretch. You missed by one. I don't think that's a moral victory. I think those were victories. As Peter Burns pointed out in that interview we played for you last segment, nobody was talking about the Gamecocks going into the season last year, and everybody was talking about them down the stretch. That's not a moral victory. That's actual victory. But I am willing to say that the same result this year might be a moral victory. The expectations are higher, but the quarterback is elevated. You lost some talent like Nick Eamon-Wari on the defensive side of the ball, but as we talked to DQ Smith, this is a very veteran group. This is a team that has been in the trenches. So I think no more moral victories is a fine take. I think it is obviously subjective what that means, but I think it's still fair as a sentiment. Let me give you a couple of more responses we have collected over the past couple of days. We'll give you our reactions. I got David Nuno of TexAgs.com in the next second. Latoya in Anderson tweeted, she said, look, Rob, I bleed Garnet and Black, but I'm also realistic. If we finish 9-3 and our only losses are top 10 teams, I'll take it. Just keep recruiting and trending up. Great one. I honestly think that might be my favorite response that we have gotten so far. I bleed Garnet and Black, but I'm realistic. If we finish 9-3 and our only losses are top 10 teams, I'll take it. Just keep recruiting and trending up. I think that might be my favorite response we've gotten so far.
It's a very grounded and realistic take, but at the same time, at what point do you take that next step? If not this year, then when? If you're consistently doing all those things that you need to do to take the next step, when you're lifting your foot up, why not this year?
I don't think it's unfair, and that is why I think the caveat of if our only losses are to top 10 teams. Listen, at some point you got to start beating top 10 teams because the only way to be a top 10 team is to beat the top 10 teams. I think at some point you've got to expect victories in that spot. I just also think it is not necessarily unfair to say we're not there yet. We're trending towards it. Maybe in week 5, 6, 7, Lenoris is balling out of his mind. He's a Heisman front runner, and we go, okay, now I expect it. But I also wouldn't be shocked if at the end of the year we go, okay, next year it's got to be the year. Cody from Malden texted the show and said, if the Gamecocks can finally put together 4 solid quarters every Saturday, 10-2 isn't crazy, but I will settle for 9-3 as long as we don't lay any eggs. End quote.
Yeah, there were a couple quarters last year where you're like, what is going on? It's just like,
you lost that game because of one of them.
yeah, everything. It's like they lost all of what they were doing, and it was unusual, but unfortunately, it happened. I mean, if they figure out why they did what they did and don't do that this year, I mean, you're solving a lot of problems.
Big H, we got 2 bigs. Now we got Big Dave, and now we got Big H. Big H in Powdersville texted and said, I'm just tired of being a next year's our year program. 2025 needs to be our year. I want us in Atlanta. No more excuses. SEC championship game or bust.
There you go. There you go. And that's goes along with what I'm saying. If you're constantly saying, we're almost there to take the next step, you got to take the next step. This needs to be the year. You need to be in there. You were almost in the playoff last year. Build on that. I mean, I want to see them play for an SEC championship, and it's a possibility. It really is.
Again, I think you would need a lot of help. I think you'd almost maybe need to backdoor your way in, but I also don't think it's unfair to say it's a possibility. Let me quickly fly through 2 or 3 more. Then we're going to take a break. David and Nuno of TexAgs.com coming up next. Nate texted the show, said, I'm not asking for a natty, Rob. I just want to see us in the 12-team playoff. If we're sitting at 10-2 and ranked top 10 in December, that's a win for me. Brian and Easley said, you want my honest expectation? 9 wins, competitive losses, no blowouts, and for the love of Spurrier, beat Clemson. That's my bar. And then T from Greenwood said, I don't care about the exact record, Rob. Just show me discipline, swagger, and development. If we're clearly better in November than September, I'll be happy to ride with Beaver for another year. So there's some of the responses we've got. You can send your response. What do you like? What do you hate? Who of those texters got it right and wrong? 844-326-3663 is the Hub City Smart Burger text line. David Nuno of TexAgs.com sat down with me yesterday. We talked Aggies. He's on Gamecock. You'll hear that conversation next on the Rob Brown Show. Fan Upstate.
Live from SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, you're listening to a special edition of the Rob Brown Show, powered by your local Ingles Market. Low prices, love the savings on the Fan Upstate. Real, unfiltered sports talk, manufactured locally for the Carolinas.
The Fan Upstate on Twitter. You can also find the Rob Brown Show on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitch. A couple of comments that have come in so far as I have asked, talk to me about South Carolina. Shane wouldn't tell us what the goals are, just that they have the talent to meet them. So I asked Carolina fans. Joey B is in the chat. He said Sellers is getting the hype because he's one of the few known quantities in the SEC this season. Stockton, Manning, Lagway, all elite prospects, but largely unproven. Most of the elite teams in the SEC this season are betting on unproven quarterbacks more than I can ever remember in one season. Bama, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, and OU all truly don't know what they have at QB. And I think that's fair. I will say one of the things that I've had a lot of conversations with, and we'll bring this back up in the final hour of the show here in about 30 minutes from now. One of the conversations that I've had, or recurring conversations I've had, is a lot of people saying Lenore Sellers has absolutely got the dog in him to be great, but we don't know if he will be or not. It was last year enough to establish him as dominance. T Swizzle says, might not have another Sellers for a decade. Dudes like that only come around so much. That is why I've said a couple of times, T Swizzle, I think this guy has it in him to be South Carolina's Cam Newton, like that guy you talk about for decades after he leaves the university. Will he turn into that? I don't know. We'll find out. Here's what I do know. What I do know is that yesterday I got the opportunity to sit down and talk to David Nuno, the director of broadcasting for TexAgs.com. They are the rival site of the Texas Aggies. I got the chance to talk to David Nuno yesterday, a little bit about his expectations about Texas A&M, a little bit about his thoughts on the Gamecocks, because I pointed out to David that I genuinely do think that the Aggies and the Gamecocks have a lot in common. One's a cult, one's not. But outside of that, they genuinely feel like two young head coaches, not young, two newer head coaches, even though we are in Shane's, fifth year now. We are talking about Mike Elko in year 2, but they are both culture-building coaches trying to rebuild the culture of an institution that believes that they deserve to be towards the top of the list. I'm going to come back to the first half of the Nuno interview later, where I told him that I think the Aggies are a cult and got his response to that, because I wanted, while we're talking Gamecocks, to get David Nuno's thoughts to you on where these two teams are, how they compare, and what he feels is true about Lenore Sellers and the Gamecocks of South Carolina. Dude, those the same vibes I took away from his last year at Duke when he got to A&M. And I did say, because while I will tell all the lame, cold jokes, I'll give credit when credit is due. I really like the football passion there. I really like the culture, and I think Elko doesn't just fit A&M, but it feels like A&M kind of fits Elko.
Sure.
And sometimes we get lost. We always say the coach fits the culture. I think it's got to be a two-way street, and I think it is. But let's go back and talk about this team, because I do think there is, to some degree, a parallel between Texas A&M and South Carolina. Two teams that have a fan base that, if we're keeping it a buck, both believe they should be better where they are, achieving more than they achieve. Both of them have a coach that is new, maybe not young, but new and learning and instituting, et cetera, et cetera. And both of them are really kind of relying on the very unique culture and vibes around their program to elevate that, to get the right guys in the job. So I do look at two programs, and I'll ask if there is a miss on anything I'm saying between these two schools, but I look at two schools that are very similar in that they're building coaches with building cultures with relatively new coaches. Obviously, Beamer at South Carolina slightly longer, and it is right now about finding maybe not the talent that's getting picked up by Ohio State and Georgia, but it's about finding those 3- and 4-star guys that fit what you want there. And I feel like A&M and South Carolina are two programs that are both trending upwards, when some of the other programs, Alabama, that have been LSU historically at the top, or maybe stalled out a little.
I'll disagree in this respect. Getting talent in A&M is not a problem.
Sure.
Jimbo got number 1 classes. Right now, Elko's got, if not the number 1, the number 2 or 3 class in the country going in for 2026. I think the resources that A&M has, there's very few schools in the country that have the resources. Now, those pockets are spent still paying Jimbo off, right?
Sure.
But that being said, I agree with you that it takes a special type of athlete to play not only for that type of head coach, but that type of community and culture, right? And in a world of NIL, where every school is spending some money, every school in the SEC and the Big 4 level, right? You better get the right guy.
Yeah.
And you better get the right guy that is there for the right reasons. He might be the right guy short term, but is he the right guy for the players around him? Is he going to lead? And I think that is what A&M is trying to do. South Carolina on the other side, I mean, excuse me for not remembering, Did anybody know that Lenore Sellers was going to be Lenore Sellers? Right?
We were hyped for him coming out of West Florence in South Carolina, but that is only because in South Carolina we'd seen the kid play high school ball.
But did you think this?
I didn't think this. I said, yeah, I think I said this on your show yesterday. This kid, I am not saying will. I'm saying can do everything Cam Newton did.
Yeah. I struggle with that. Even though he played better than Cam Newton against A&M this past year, he was amazing. I have to see more. I think he is easily 1A or 1B, like he should be. Where I struggle with him is he the type of quarterback that is going to elevate, and I don't want to say inferior talent, but not the same talent he had around him last year. Okay, they may be better, right? That's what they pay these coaches to do. So is he that level of quarterback that with a unknown at running back and an offensive line that I think looks different than last year, correct? And some questions at wide receiver. Is he the kind of guy to make them better players? Or is he KJ Jefferson? I know KJ Jefferson was coming into 23, like as the guy, right? Yeah. Is he KJ Jefferson? Really good, but like he doesn't have pieces around him.
He needs dudes.
Right? So that's what we're about to find out. Because KJ came in with, and I'm not saying that Lenoris is KJ. I'm just making the comparison of when KJ lost that group for 21, he didn't seem like the same quarterback. I'm curious, but I think if I remember correctly, South Carolina changed offensive coordinators to fit more of what Lenore does.
That is correct. They went from Dal Loggins, who goes back, I think he went to Appalachian State to take over, and they brought in, hilariously, Mike Shula, which got them a lot of heat. But I also point out that everywhere Shula's been a coordinator, it's worked. He might just be one of those kind of Cliff Kingsbury, your Peter Principal out at OC kind of guys. And on top of that, knows how to run a pro set with a mobile quarterback. He's done it before. It's actually, to me, a better fit than Dal Loggins was. Dal Loggins was a tight end coach at Arkansas who had never been a coordinator. It was, even I love Shane. I didn't understand that hire at the time. I look at this one and I go, I'm not saying it's going to work out. I am saying it fits the pieces of the puzzle you need to fill in.
If I remember correctly as well, since Shane has been there, this series has gone back and forth, right? So all the Kyle Field games have gone to A&M. All the games in South Carolina have gone to South Carolina.
Yep. So it is going to be interesting. Can they break the trend? Let's talk about the conference at large. David Nuno of TexAgs.com joining us here on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate. I think that it is pretty much accepted at this point. There are two top teams, Texas and Georgia. Then there is a second tier. Correct me if I've got anybody too high, too low, or you just disagree with the tier foundation of the argument. Texas and Georgia fighting for the top. And then there's a handful of teams at that next level that I put Alabama on. Are they going to be able, Kayla DeBoer, to take a step forward? Got questions about Ty Simpson at quarterback. I think I put LSU under Brian Kelly. I think Brian Kelly's in a world of hurt if they don't get to probably 10-2 and at least a playoff threat this year. I look at Texas A&M and South Carolina. I kind of think these are two teams maybe slightly behind Bama and LSU, but trending upwards, whereas those two schools kind of feel like they're stalled. This conference, for a conference that has historically been the best conference in college football, even I will acknowledge that it feels about as parity-filled as it's felt in a very long time.
I'm not even convinced about the top two teams, right?
Yeah.
I look at Georgia. Yeah, I think talent-wise, they should be the top two teams. Georgia's schedule is crazy, right? And there are questions at quarterback, and there are questions, as there are every year with Kirby Smart, of replacing talent that went to the NFL. Texas, I like Arch take away the A&M goggles. I think Arch is a very likable person, right? Like what I've seen in interviews, seems like a good guy that loves football and waited his turn. That's a great story when you're that kind of hype. But I got my questions about him. He hasn't played a lot.
Yeah.
And the teams he played against, Mississippi State and whoever else was the week before, he was cool in packages. I'd be interested to see how he handles defensive coordinators taking a look at him. So I have my questions about both of those teams. I still think they're 10-2, at worst 9-3, but probably 10-2-ish. And then you got that tier that you're talking about. Alabama, I think, is going to be better than people think. LSU, apparently the best team that Brian Kelly's ever had. Okay. I think that's an interesting series.
Yep.
A&M has had their way with LSU at home, but has lost every year. And I'm talking about since Brian Kelly's been there. But since 1994, A&M has not won in Baton Rouge. So I think LSU is an interesting team. You lose your offensive line. Nuss showed us he could be the best quarterback in the SEC. Also showed us he could be one of the worst, right, when you put pressure on him. So I got my questions there. A&M, we know what the questions are, if they can stay healthy and can they get past the 8-4 moniker. South Carolina, I already detailed what I think about them. So, yeah, I agree with you from a parity standpoint. And I was actually pondering on the show today, could we have 2 9-3 teams in the SEC championship game this year?
It's, I was talking about that a little bit yesterday. It's not crazy, especially with Texas and Georgia playing each other in season. There's their Texas opening at Ohio State. There could be 10-2 before they even really hit the ground.
So could they lose at A&M A&M goes to there, or at Florida? I mean, those are all games, losable games in the SEC.
Yeah, I didn't even put Florida in the mix, who under DJ Lagway probably should be too. So I think this is a fantastic year. Let me ask you one or two more, and we'll cut you loose. David Nuno from TexAgs.com. Yesterday, Greg Sankey said two things, one that kind of jumped out to me, one that jumped out to the general public. I'm sure it came up on your show as well. The first is, for the first time that I am aware of, Greg Sankey referred to the SEC as a super conference. And he almost kind of like made a joke out of it. At least on my show in our market, the concept of super conference has kind of started to have a secondary, deeper meaning of eventually it's our show and we'll allow whoever wants to and can to participate somewhere. So I don't necessarily think that's Greg Sankey saying that's the destination, but for him to use that term when that's kind of what it's become, at least for me, accepted to be, I found that interesting. Am I being a drama queen about that, or is there something to that?
What is a super conference in your eyes? To me, they've always been a super conference.
Sure.
Right? And yeah, the additions of Texas and Oklahoma even strengthen that. But to me, in this era of super conference, it's when we get to 2 conferences, right? So, but
aren't we kind of there? The ACC's not good. The Big 12's trying to stay alive.
Clemson making a run this year.
I think Clemson can make a run. Miami, I don't believe in Mario Cristobal, but they've got the talent if Carson Beck's the guy. And then what? I mean, I don't believe Bill Belichick's going to do a damn thing at UNC. That's a personal thing. But it's a 2-team conference right now because Florida State is absolutely cratered. I'm not saying Norvell can't bring them back, but
he's done it before.
He has. They're a long way from it. And then there's the Big 12, which, respectfully, the best thing that conference has got going for it is Deion Sanders. And I'm going to keep it a buck. I think Colorado without Travis Hunter and Shador this year is in a world of pain.
Sure. You don't believe in Arizona State?
I think Arizona State's fine, but, I mean, they ain't no Cam Scatterbo out there. And that dude literally carried that team last year. They're good, but that guy was a difference maker.
If we consider a super conference to have a team that has a chance to win a national championship, or how many teams, then, Clemson might be the only team in the other 2 conferences that I think has a legit chance. But it is the SEC, it is the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is top heavy, and the SEC maybe hurts them a little bit. They're not top heavy; they're loaded across 1 through 14, probably 1 through 14. I'm sure, maybe 1 through 16. I mean, because can 16 beat 4 at any point in the season? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look at what Vandy did last year. They weren't 16 last year by any stretch.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. All right, last one, and we'll cut you loose. All right, I'm going to cut it there, and we will come back and finish up our interview with David Nuno a little bit later in the show because asking you shall receive. I pointed out to him yesterday that respectfully and lovingly, as I do love David Nuno, I've known him for coming up on 20 years now. I think his school's a cult. And I told him that to his face. And I'll give you his answer later in the show. Here is what I will also tell you is coming up later on in the show. In the next hour of the show, Elijah Campbell of 107.5 The Game in Columbia, South Carolina is going to join us. We're going to talk some Gamecocks with him. I'll run you through some of the sound that we picked up from Media Days yesterday, and we'll get you prepped for the rest of SEC Media Days, day number 3, coming up today. All of that coming up after Lonzo hands you maybe the most seductive 60 seconds of your day with this Sports Flash.
The National League claimed last night's All-Star game in a home run derby swing-off. The NL led 6-0 at one point, but the AL tied it up in the 9th, leading to the tiebreaker where players from each team got 3 swings and the homers were tallied. Philadelphia's Kyle Schwarber hit 3 in 3 pitches to give the NL a 4-3 win. Caitlin Clark was pulled from last night's 85-77 Fever win over the Sun with apparent groin injury in the final minute of the game. Fever coach Stephanie White said Clark felt something in her groin and that she would be further evaluated today. Jets cornerback Sauce Gardner is now the highest paid defensive back in NFL after signing a 4-year, $120.4 million deal just 24 hours after the Jets extended receiver Garrett Wilson Gardner's contract includes $85.63 million guaranteed.
Up to the minute, upstate traffic. I-85 both directions from mile marker 52 to 55 Pelham Road.
away, and I'm sure that in the last couple of mornings he's been listening to me from 30 yards away. Two dudes that are the first two. I get to claim this, Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. I like to claim this just because it's got that ring to it. First guys in, last guys out. That's us.
Oh, we get to live it this week.
That's great.
That's not just a cliche. We are living. That is a fact in this building. We are here before the sun comes up. We are here until it is time to leave. And there's something about that that makes it feel a little more rewarding. You know what? I enjoy getting to hear your show from my table as well, because I know that we are like one of the first two guys in this building when it's absolutely a ghost town. And it does kind of feel a little eerie. It's like being in school when you're a kid on a Saturday and the lights are off and nobody's there. But it's still, it's a pretty good feeling. I prefer this.
I do too.
All right, I need to jump in real quick. I just have to say that's an amazing shirt, and that Rob will go out and buy like 3 of those later today.
If I had found that shirt, we might have been matching today because it is elite. It is elite.
Hey, life's a beach, man, if you bring the sand.
Dig it. That's my guy. Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. Let's flash back to Monday. Shane Beamer, Lenora Sellers, DQ Smith, Nick Barrett, all in here. One of the things that I pointed out on the show a couple of times is obviously, despite everything Lenore's did on the field last year, a lot of folks are still asking questions. Is he that guy? Whatever. I've got a betting slip out on this guy to be a Heisman Trophy finalist this year. Okay, and I feel good about it.
I would.
This young man was walking around this building on Monday looking like an absolute rock star. Gaggle of reporters, ESPN cameras all over him the whole time. And on top of that, for whatever it's worth, I thought he was answering questions exceptionally well. Sounded good to go. In fact, he got asked on the network, how do you feel about the Heisman hype? How do you feel about the folks in Columbia calling you the Heisman? And a lot of quarterbacks, I think, would give you the cliches. Oh, it's personal award, not worried. He was like, I think it's great. I'm leaning into it. I hope we can get it done. Like, he feels like a dude that took the back half of the year, the Clemson win. It feels to me like there is an unbridled confidence in Lenora Sellers, which for a guy that has as much pressure and hype on him as he does, that's invaluable.
Oh, it absolutely is. And really, his attitude here in Atlanta at Media Days is a reflection as to what his confidence is like in terms of how it's changed, right? Let's go back a little bit to week 1 of last year. Old Dominion comes to Williams-Brice, and it's a disaster. The game itself is a disaster. Really, the offense scored touchdowns because the defense forced turnovers deep inside Old Dominion's territory. The offense stalled out. I want to say the number was 114 of passing yards Lenore's threw in that game. The completion percentage wasn't very good, and it took a Jalen Kilgore interception to keep Old Dominion from crossing the South Carolina side of the 50 to seal the deal and win that game. That game feels like 50 years ago because of how Lenore's and the team changed. But after that game, in the press conference, he admitted to being really nervous. The press conference that Monday, he admitted to being really nervous. There were a lot of nerves. There may be some seeds of self-doubt, right, which is completely normal when you're a first-time starter, playing for a school that you were growing up right down the road from, and you have all these family and friends, and now you are in that spotlight that you didn't have to have the previous year that you were there at South Carolina. But then you saw, after he had his moment in the first half of the LSU game, we had that 75-yard touchdown run. He got hurt, missed some time. The Ole Miss game when he came back, maybe he came back a little early is kind of the feeling that I've been getting, is that he came back a little early to try to play in that game and pushed it a little bit. But then you saw, even in a loss against Alabama, he was making some crazy throws. He was making plays when the pocket was breaking down, and they lost contain on Alabama's defense. And I think he finally probably saw that as proof of concept that I can do this at the highest level. If I can make plays at Alabama, I can make plays against anyone in this league. And then you saw the 6-game winning streak where he was otherworldly in doing it different ways, whether it being throwing for 300+ yards against Missouri and engineering a comeback in the last couple minutes to win that game. And then what we saw in the Clemson game to wrap up the regular season, I think that has allowed him to feel more confident that he is this type of football player because he's now seen it himself do it on the football field.
Without a doubt. So let me ask you this. I'm not going to ask you, are you buying into the Heisman hype? Because I think with the teams we cover, like, we're all going to say yeah. And for the record, I do. Again, bet slip out on it. Instead, let me ask you, do you believe that confidence translates to what the Gamecocks need him to be. I've said a couple of times on the show, and you're welcome to disagree with this too, as go Lenoris, go the Gamecocks this year. If this kid is a Heisman finalist playing at that level, I think 10-2 is on the table. I think maybe a backdoor to the SEC title game is on the table. If Lenoris Sellers ain't it, if last year was an anomaly and not what he really is, this could be a 6-6 team, and South Carolina fans are left scratching their heads at the end of the year going, what the hell just happened? And the truth could be anywhere in the middle. Yeah. Do you believe that he is the guy that can put them on the successful end of that spectrum?
Absolutely. And I agree with you. Like, the teams we cover, we just see these players more. And sometimes we can lose perspective of how good other guys are nationally. And that's one thing I tell, our audience is like, look, Cade Klubnik is legit too. That's another guy that he's legitimately a top 5-6 pick in the NFL draft. And scouts love him as much as they do Lenoris. But when it comes to Lenoris too, I think that the hype is certainly real because of what NFL guys say about him. It's one thing for me to be like, this kid's special. It's one thing for me to see him and say he can single-handedly win you games on the offensive side of the ball. But when Todd McShay is pulling out, comparison saying he's got, Josh Allen type traits, Lamar Jackson type traits, that's when it really clicks with me. Like, okay, it's not just me saying this because I see him, in games. And we get to see him practice a little bit whenever there's media availability and that we're just around him more. It can be easy for me to fall into that trap. But when other people are kind of confirming that have no skin in the game and that their whole business is not just evaluating NFL talent, but getting it from GMs. Like, they get a lot of those evaluations from GMs. So whenever that happens, it confirms it a little bit. My thing with Lenoris is he can still be Heisman level good and the team still go 7-5 just because of all they have to replace on defense. But I will say, defensively, the defensive line is able to stop the run, and the Carolina defense can somewhat mimic what they were last year, despite having to replace so many dudes that went on to the NFL and heard their name called at the draft. And they keep him from having to score 40 points each game to win and having a Jaden Daniels-like situation at LSU. They can go 10-2. And I think he's the type of player that makes that difference for a school like South Carolina that doesn't normally get those dudes at quarterback.
So you mentioned the defense there, and that's where I kind of wanted to segue next. Elijah Campbell for 107.5 The Game in Columbia here on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate. You lose guys like Nick Emmanwori. We're talking first-round draft picks. And on one hand, it's very beneficial for South Carolina to have that happen because now Shane Beamer on a recruiting trail can look at defensive guys and go, I'm sending boys to the league, you're next in line. But obviously on the gridiron in we're looking at 40-some-odd days until that August 31st matchup with Virginia Tech, you got dogs that you've got to replace. And what I noticed when we talked with Nick Barrett and DQ Smith earlier this week was even though your top talent went, what has been left behind is a very experienced group, a lot of four-year guys, a lot of third-year guys, a lot of guys that have been through the meat grinder of some not-so-successful seasons early under Shane Beamer and then the successful season that you went through last year. Talk to me a little bit about what the expectations are, because I've said a couple of times, if South Carolina's defense is holding teams to 24-27, but they're scoring 35-42, we don't say they went 12-0 and won the Natty with only a +5 scoring differential.
Right.
Well, like, that's not hanging on the banners in championship teams. So do you think that this defense this year, with the experience that they have coming back, even if they have lost some of the biggest playmakers out there, is capable of, and I phrase it this way intentionally, doing enough?
Doing enough is going to be the term this year. I think on in the secondary part, they're set. I mean, the secondary is going to be the strength of that defense because if you look at what they have coming back, Jalen Kilgore is another guy, depending on the mock draft you subscribe to, from whatever prognosticator is your favorite, you may or may not see Jalen Kilgore's name in the back end of the first round. He's a guy that was tied for the SEC lead in interceptions, and a couple of those interceptions saved their hide in games. I mentioned that Old Dominion game to start the season. His interception sealed the deal against Missouri. His interception against Illinois kept them in that game. I mean, he was one of the more opportunistic defensive backs in college football, and he's got all the tools that you need. Judge Collier at corner, I thought, grew immensely over the course of the season. He went from getting targeted 10 times against Old Dominion to only having 2 more games where he's targeted more than 5. Or targeted 5, right at 5, no more than 5, because he got a lot better in terms of how he was at the cornerback position. And then they added Brandon Cisse in the transfer portal from NC State, a guy that Clemson fans would be familiar with as well. That guy is a proven dude at corner. I think they're set in the secondary. The secondary, I think, can be opportunistic enough to force a lot of turnovers. Another strength from last year's defense. But the defensive line, you are banking on hitting on the guys you brought in. Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, I think, is probably the most important player on the Gamecock defense because coming out of high school, he was one of those top 15 recruits in the country of a heralded Texas A&M recruiting class, just never panned out. But you need him to be that ultimate run stopper. TJ Sanders and Tonka Hemingway meant a ton to that defense because teams just couldn't run the ball on South Carolina. The only team that really did so successfully in the regular season was Missouri. And that was how Missouri really got in that game because they were able to gash them on the ground a little bit. But that was more of an exception than the reality. So when I look at this defense, it's can you stop the run and can you hold teams to 3.5 yards per carry or less? And if they can do that, we're looking at a top 25 defensive unit. And if that's the case, that's the best case scenario for South Carolina. Now, if teams are able to run up the middle on you and manage the clock and keep Lenora Sellers off of the field, then we're starting to get into you're playing a lot of one-score games and you're going to need a little bit of one-score game luck to help carry you throughout the season. But guys like Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, Monkel Goodwine, Sean Murphy at linebacker to replace Demetrius Knight and Debo Williams, also important players that just haven't proven it for a full season. So you like the talent that's there for those two guys specifically, but you've never seen them do it at this level for 12 full games. That's going to be the thing that I'm looking forward to seeing if the defense can be good enough to support what they have on the offensive side of the ball.
I think that's more than fair. Let's go back to offense for just a minute, and then I want to transition it over to Shane and kind of what is fair for the expectations. Beamer was here a couple of days ago, said that he is relatively confident that we will have a resolution to the Racial Faison situation, hopefully going to figure out, hopefully get the waiver, but learn if he's not going to. What is the best? I mean, getting the waiver is the best case scenario. Being able to plug him in as RB1 is the best case scenario. But what does this offense look like if he gets the waiver and is clear to play? And more importantly, if he does not, what's the run game look like for the Gamecocks this year? Because the best way to open up the field for Lenora Sellers is to have a threat to home run hit from the backfield every time. So you can't play loose with him. What does the run game look like this year with and without Faison in the backfield?
With Faison in the backfield, you'll see a lot more of an efficient offense, kind of with what Rocket Sanders brought. I think one of the best friends Lenore's could have had in that backfield was Rocket Sanders, a guy who can rush for 1,000 yards. And you would feel good about the backfield because Rasul Faison, even at the Mountain West level, which is still really good football, was a 1,000-yard rusher last year, an 1,100-yard rusher last year. He was a weapon for Utah State. And that opens up your offense completely. It takes more pressure off of Lenora Sellers to be Superman, right? You don't have to be 2010 Cam Newton if you have a running game that you can rely upon or a running back that you can give the ball 20 times to. And that's why it's so significant because I like Oscar Attaway as a runner. I like Isaiah Augustov, who they took out of Colorado in the transfer portal as a runner because they're both hard-nosed, good change of pace backs. But Oscar Attaway specifically, in the 4 years that he's played college football, has never led his team in carries. He's never been asked to carry the ball 20 times in a game or even 15 times per game in a consistent basis. Same thing with Augustov. Even though he's the leading rusher for Colorado last year, they didn't really like to run the ball because they had a fella named Shedeur Sanders at quarterback and a receiver at Travis Hunter they preferred to go to instead. He was never asked to be a bell cow back. So if Rasul Faison is clear to play, you have a bell cow back. It's a more complete offense. What the running back room looks like without him, you're now in backfield preservation mode, and you have to find somebody that you can trust giving the ball to 10 to 15 times a game or 5 times more extra than you normally would. I think if Faison isn't cleared, it's going to be a by committee thing. And the biggest concern there is, as much as I like Attaway and Augustov as rushers, those two are very similar. They're in between the tackles. They rely a lot on breaking tackles, which they can do, but they don't have that high-end speed that Faison has. So it limits the type of run game that you can have if Faison's not cleared to play. The offensive, I don't think it's an effect on like the floor of the Carolina offense because Faison can play and you can still maybe not have a good run game because the questions on offensive line might not be answered the way you want them to. But it changes the way you distribute the amount of carries in your backfield and the type of runners you have in your backfield if Faison's cleared or not.
Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game in Columbia, South Carolina, here on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate. All right, one or two more, and we'll cut you loose to get back to media days. Shane Beamer was here on Monday, and there was a bit of a, we'll say, interesting moment between him and Paul Feinbaum on the SEC Network. I'm sure it made its way into your circle, where Paul said without saying, you guys can't win the SEC this year, and basically gave Shane the opportunity to say, okay, here's our goal. And I thought Shane was, I liked that he was willing to kind of butt heads with Feinbaum a little bit in defense of the team, and he said, we have everything on our roster to do what we need to do, which I think is a fine answer, but it came off a little politician in that he didn't say what that is, right? Like, it's real easy to get up on the stump asking for votes and go, if you vote for me, I'm going to make your life better, and then leave the stage without saying how. And that works, but I asked our fans here in Greenville and Spartanburg, and I'll ask you to fill in the blank when Shane says we have everything on our roster to do what we want to do. What we want to do is what?
Make the college football playoff. They were so close last year.
Sure.
They were so close. I think the reason they weren't in the playoff last year wasn't the amount of games they lost. I think that's the biggest misconception, is that the strength of schedule wasn't taken into account. It was taken into account because you were right on the doorstep at 9-3. Miami went 10-2 and was an afterthought. BYU 10-2, afterthought.
Sure.
Why are they afterthoughts and you're not? Is because you played a significantly harder schedule. But the fact of the matter is, you lost to the two teams that were ahead of you in the college football playoff rankings going into the last week. If both those teams win in their rivalry game, which Ole Miss and Alabama did, they're not going to leapfrog you. They're not going to punish schools like Alabama and Ole Miss for winning. And I think that's been a pretty consistent thing for the committee since its inception, right, is that they will not punish teams for winning. You're punished if you lose. So it's the fact that you lost to the two teams that are ahead of you. They basically looked at that grouping of the 3 9-3 SEC teams as a three-way tie, and you're not winning the three-way tie if you lost head-to-head in both of those, even though you have better, more explainable losses than Alabama and Ole Miss. But that's how close they were, right? If you just lose a different combination of 3 games, but still beat Clemson on the road and still beat Texas A&M when they were a top 10 team and still have the wins that you do, it's a different story. And I think they're very aware of how close they were. And when Shane Beamer talks about where we want to be, it's the college football playoff, because now it's a reality for teams like South Carolina. Look, I think we're all pretty self-aware here in this great state that South Carolina's played in one SEC championship game ever since joining the league in 1992. Just one. The league is incredibly difficult. And now whenever you're able to expand the playoff and allow more access, that opens the door for schools that are kind of in the middle class of their leagues to be able to gain access to something they've never had access to. So when he says that, the only thing that comes to my mind is the college football playoff.
All right, last one, and we will cut you loose. There has been a conversation ongoing. Shane Beamer has been, to me, a fantastic culture builder in Columbia from the moment he showed up. And I think just like everybody else, I think had questions about the hire. All right, is this a nepotism hire? He's never been a head coach, yada, yada, yada. All fair questions at the time, I thought. You started hanging the welcome home banners. You started putting up the pictures, and it just felt like the groundswell of support from South Carolina fans has been incalculably valuable to them ever since that moment. But I've also said a few times, at some point, and last year I think was a trend in this direction, at some point all that culture and excitement, it's got to start equaling wins. And it's got to start not just equaling wins, but it's got to start equaling success, trophies, championship appearances, playoff appearances. What is the importance for Shane Beamer to accomplish that this year? And if this team does fall below the mark, 7-5, 6-6, 8-4, I think is even probably below where they want to be. What's next for South Carolina?
Yeah, if they fall below that, let's say they don't, in this hypothetical, let's say they don't make the college football playoff and it's an 8-4. It's a good season, but not a great one. I think it still looks pretty good for him because I think we've seen the proof of concept, right? I don't think there's going to be people really out for blood or fans that are maybe more mad at him. And I know there's probably more context needed because it might depend how you lose games.
That's what I've been saying all week.
It can depend how you lose games. If you go full Les Miles on your timeouts and mismanage them or anything like that, make a bad decision.
Mario Cristobal and run instead of Neal.
Lord, yes.
I'm still mad about it, and I hate Miami.
Yeah, like that's one of those things that if something like that kept you out of the college football playoff, then that sting will linger a little bit. But I think the only way that the momentum kind of dies is if you go 5-7. If you have a year like 2023 where it's the absolute worst case scenario, then that momentum might die a little bit. But the thing about Shane that I really appreciate from him is his ability to sell the program in his ability to make you believe in something you didn't think you would believe in. And I think that's what last year proved. I didn't believe in last year's team. I was sitting here at SEC Media Days in Dallas last season. I think I voted them 12th.
Yeah.
And I was like, if they make a bowl game, good. That's a building block for the future. 9-3 in the regular season wasn't something I thought was remotely close to possible. So I think just given that proof of concept right there would give fans a little hope, even if it's a little more of a disappointing season, like a 7-5, 8-4 maybe, then I think that he's bought enough good grace to where I don't think there's a ton of pressure from the school's administration or the fan base to make any type of change.
I like it. Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game in Columbia. My man, great to meet you. It's been a pleasure to share the waves. I got to get you on the show in Greenville a few more times if you're good with it.
Anytime, man.
Let's do it.
Anytime.
Let's do it.
Happy to do
Elijah
it.
Campbell from 107.5 The Game. We are back after this on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Update.
QC.
Live from SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, you're listening to a special edition of the Rob Brown Show, powered by your local Ingles Market. Low prices, love the savings on the Fan Upstate.
And gentlemen, allow me to tell you about our friends at QC Kinetics, the nation's leader in non-surgical regenerative therapy for joint injuries. diving into not just the success or failures of offensive and defensive strategies and tactics and coaches and all that, but when you can start breaking down player by player what will be impactful. And Elijah knows that roster as well as anybody else that we've had the chance to get to. So I very much appreciate his time. Talked with him during that break a minute ago. Elijah is going to be joining us in and out the football season as we get a little bit closer, because, again, August 31st is the start of football. I mean, football season started on Monday, but it's like we're playing football, boys. Football that counts, football that's meaningful, football that goes on the record. Since I asked him, and I have gotten a few more texts on the Hub City Spartanburger text line at 844-326-3663, I have asked Gamecock fans. Shane Beamer said, we have everything we need on this roster to accomplish everything we want to accomplish. But he didn't say what that was. He didn't say what the goal was. And this is not a slight to Shane. I understand it. There's a certain way that you have to speak and address the media. This is why coach cliches are coach cliches. Sports speak is sports speak. I get it. But I do want it said. I think it's better for all of us to know kind of what's that baseline. So I've asked South Carolina fans on Twitter, on Twitch, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, etc., to give me what are you expecting? What should Shane Beamer have set as the goal? If you were in his shoes and you had to set a goal, what would it be? I've read you a handful of tweets, texts, DMs, comments that we have gotten and responded to them. Lonzo and I going to do the same here. I will start on our live stream, which you can join at facebook.com/thefanupstate, or by searching and subscribing to The Fan Upstate on YouTube, or searching and following The Rob Brown Show, The Fan Upstate on Twitter. You can do the same with The Rob Brown Show on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Twitch. We go live all 4 hours of every single show. You get to come behind the scenes, have conversations with Lonzo and I off the air that sometimes make it on, sometimes don't. Nettie Mac has joined the Facebook stream. She says, Gamecock girl here, and I am honestly just expecting us to be in the conversation, and I would love for us to play spoiler to the big boys. I would say in response to that, to Nettie Mac's comment here, Lonzo, I think it's fair. I have landed a couple of times on making an SEC title game appearance, even if you backdoor your way in because you get some help and some other teams lose. Great. That is a huge accomplishment. It would be, as Elijah pointed out, the second time in program history you've made it. That would be a big accomplishment. I think getting into the playoffs is probably a roof goal. Like, it's a real possibility, but as I've also said a number of times, I think we would have to evaluate the context of missing out. And Elijah said the same thing. If you lose only the top 10 teams and they are all competitive one-score games, then I think you can go, okay, now we're at the level that we're in these games. We're competing in these games. Now the next step is to start winning some of them. But if you miss the playoffs and you're 9-3 and you get blown out by Texas A&M, a team that you are good enough to beat, then we're maybe having a different conversation. But I would be willing to agree with Nettie Mac, great one, that if it's late November and we're making our way to rivalry week and South Carolina is in the discussion, and I'm not talking about to have an impact on teams that are trying to get in. I am saying if we are discussing on November 20th, on November 15th, November 10th, here are the different scenarios for the last 2-3 weeks of the season that if South Carolina wants in, they've got to win out, or they've got to win out and this team's got to lose, or they've got to win out and these two teams have to lose. If we're even having that conversation and it's realistic and not South Carolina's in, if Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, Texas, LSU, and A&M all lose this week, if it's realistic that we are talking scenarios that they need to happen to get in, I'd say that's a solid goal to set.
I've been covering the Gamecocks for 28 years in the Upstate. And there was a time early on in Spurrier where the conversation was the Gamecocks are there. The Gamecocks are right where they need to be. They got a shot to win the SEC. And that was a good feeling. And you wanted to believe, hey, this is how it's going to be going forward. And then it faded near the end of Spurrier, and it's never really been back until now. And in order for this to be not just a feeling, but a sense of normalcy, you've got to take that next step, and it has to happen this year. Don't want that good feeling of last year and another good feeling this year. You want that to be in the conversation every single year and not take big time steps back.
I with some of your responses. Again, the Hub City Spartanburger text line is 844-326-3663. Shoot us a text. We'll read them on the air. You can also get me on Twitter, on my Facebook page at The Rob Brown Show, on the station at Facebook page at The Fan Upstate, and across all the social medias at The Rob Brown Show. Here's some more responses we've gotten so far. RJ has written in. He said, Rob, I've been a Gamecock fan since birth, and I'm telling you, 2025 has to be the year we hit double-digit wins. The schedule lines up. Beamer's got his guys 10-2, or we underachieved. Melissa has reached out to the show, said, I'm not expecting miracles. I am expecting consistency. Give me 9-3. Don't get embarrassed on national TV and show up every week like we belong. That's all I want. I will say this, and I don't know that we'll be able to measure this great one. I don't know that we'll be able to plant a flag and go, this is that moment. But I do think that the mark of success will be the attitude of fans switching to we belong here. Not we're on our way, not we can get there, not we're real close, not the foundation's down and now we got to execute. When the attitude shifts to we're supposed to be here, we're supposed to be in games with Georgia and Alabama and LSU and Texas A&M, we're supposed to be winning these games, that will be the moment that I think we say we've made it, it's successful. The problem is doing that is tough to do, A, and B, I don't know if we can have a moment that we go, we did it. This is where the fan attitude is.
Well, yeah, there is one if they're in the playoff.
That's fair. Tank wrote the show. Tank said, bro, I'm tired of building. We've been building since I was a kid. It's time to cash in. I won Atlanta. I won 4 on the SEC. Love that. Jay has texted the show, said, I'll be thrilled with 8-4 if we're in every game till the end. I'm tired of going up 14 and blowing it late. Let's finish strong and keep stacking dubs. Marcus texted the show, said, Rob, all I want is for us to control the line of scrimmage again. If we do that, we're a 9-win team easy. But if we get moved up front, it's 7-5 for us. Daryl said, not going to lie, man, I think this is the year we get it done. Call me crazy. I think 11-1 is on the table if we stay healthy. That if we stay healthy is doing a lot of weight. Ryan said it, my buddy Brian said it a minute ago. That if we stay healthy could be the difference between a playoff run and 8-4, 7-5, 6-3, and us going, what next? All right, we got to take a break. We have already had Caitlin DeBoer speaking on behalf of the Crimson Tide down here below me. We're going to check in on all the sound we picked up from Media Day yesterday. That's coming up next to wrap up the special edition of the Rob Brown Show live from SEC Media Days and College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the Fan Upstate.
Live from SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, you're listening to a special edition of the Rob Brown Show, powered by your local English.
minutes ago. The Alabama Crimson Tide players and coaches doing their media car wash right now. Shortly after that, Mississippi State will take to the stage. Then the afternoon session will include the Florida Gators and the Oklahoma Boomer Sooners. Brent Venables will be making his way. You know, we've been talking about, and since this is kind of a crossover spot for the teams that we cover here, great one. You know, we've been talking this week about teams that I believe have coaches that are either on the hot seat or could end up on the hot seat at some point. And we have mentioned Brian Kelly at LSU, which I think is very fair. We've mentioned Hugh Freeze at Auburn, which I think is very fair. We have mentioned Sam Pittman at Arkansas. I'm interested to see, to get his thoughts whether or not they think Sam Pittman can end up on the hot seat. I think Arkansas could win 3 games this year. Brent Venables is an interesting name there because they paid him a buttload of money to leave Clemson and make his way over to Oklahoma. And Oklahoma fans do not feel like they have gotten the results that they have paid for so far this year. And I think it's fair to talk about that, but I also got during the break the link sent to me to vote on the all SEC teams this year and to vote on our predicted order of finish. And I will fill that out between tonight and tomorrow. But I was looking at and thinking about this quite a bit. Like, when I look at, because the first position, and I'm coming back to Brent Venables, stick with me. I'm doing the weave. All right, I'm doing the weave. Stick with me. Brent Venables not given the results to Oklahoma that they wanted, but we also knew it was going to be a process after the chaos of how everything ended there when Lincoln Riley left to go out to California IA and coach the USC Trojans. It was inevitably going to be a turnover, and we also know that Brent Venables is, I think, fair to say, one of the most unique coaches in all of college football, and so therefore shifting the culture, as we've talked about with Shane Beamer, Mike Elko at A&M, was going to take some time. In the quarterback vote, when asked to name the quarterbacks I think should be on the all SEC team, listed at Oklahoma this year is John Mateer. Mateer is, as Joey B said in the comments on our live stream earlier today, John Mateer is an unproven commodity. We don't know really what he's going to get. What we do know is that he ran Jackson Arnold out of town, much like happened to Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma, that led to him being a South Carolina Gamecock. John Mateer won the starting job out over Jackson Arnold and ended up being the reason that Jackson Arnold transferred to Auburn and will be playing for Hugh Freeze this year. Is it fair to say that Brent Venables is on the hot seat because he does have a quarterback, again, unproven commodity, but everybody here seems to be very high on John Mateer to be maybe the best quarterback nobody's talking about in this conference? Is it fair to say that A, he is on the hot seat this year, and that B, anything less than Oklahoma beating or at least being competitive with Texas and winning, I would say probably 8 games, could have Brent Venables out of a job in Norman? I don't think that's an unfair thing to discuss.
Are you shocked that he's still there? Because he had a rocky start and didn't think he would make it as long as he has. And the fact that he's not mentioned being on the hot seat every single year is a little surprising.
I think Oklahoma more so than Alabama. I think Oklahoma fans, and this isn't a shot at Bama fans, but also, yes, it is. I think that Oklahoma fans understood when Lincoln Riley left to go to USC, that because of who Lincoln Riley was as kind of a player's coach, and I'm not saying Brent Venables isn't, but we all watch Brent Venables at Clemson. We know the absolute, crank to 11 intensity that Brent Venables has. I think they knew it was going to be a culture shift, and I think they knew it was going to take a little time to find that culture shift, and I think they've been willing to give him that time. But much as we've said about Shane Beamer, at some point the culture shift has to start translating to wins, and it just hasn't for OU yet. So I don't know. I kind of feel like we could theoretically say that it's justifiable to put him on the hot seat a little bit too. Let me run this for you. The SEC Network this morning had a bunch of dudes on it. Roma Harper was on there. Laura Rutledge was on it. My dog, Benjamin Watson, who we are going to be sitting down with later on this glorious day and interviewing, was on it. They spent a couple of minutes discussing who from the Southeastern Conference has the best chance to win the college football national championship game. And there were a couple of interesting takes and remarks in there.
Georgia's won 31 games in a row between the hedges at home. That is a tough place to play at all. Only
So this to me, you've had your time. Thank you so much. You're the best. Love you. Okay, bye. I don't know why I did all that. This is what I have seen happening the last couple of days, Lonzo. It feels like nationally, it's almost like like nationally, it feels like writers are just penning Texas in. Oh, Arch is going to be a dude. Arch is going to be a guy. He's going to carry him. Texas is almost penciled in, despite the fact that we have pointed out a number of times. They got two real tough national championship possible previews on the schedule, including week 1 at Ohio State, and then was it week 8 against Georgia, and still being penciled in. Here's what I found. The one place where the Texas Longhorns are being questioned the most is here at SEC Media Days. And I'm not talking about dudes like me that are very clearly here to cover one of the SEC teams. I am talking about by Paul Feinbaum, Ben Watson, Roman Harper. I'm talking about the SEC Network folks. I'm talking about some of the nationally syndicated folks that are over on the other side of the building. I have heard them. I heard Josh Pate talking about it a couple of days ago. It feels like 3 weeks ago, it's Texas and whoever's going to play Arch Manning in the championship game. And here at SEC Media Days, it feels like, and I started it, David Nuno agreed with it, it feels like Arch and the Longhorns are being questioned here more than they are anywhere else in the country. And I don't know that means anything. I just find it interesting.
Well, it comes down to that they don't really know. I mean, Arch Manning, the name is known, but you still don't know what he's going to do on the field. And there's still always the Spurrier quote, which a lot of people have thought about. Why isn't he starting? So you keep talking. Everyone's talking about Sellers, and if the team will go as he goes. It's the same with Texas. The team will go as Arch Manning goes. If Arch Manning is not that good, Texas is not going to be back in the national championship picture. If the Ohio State defense gets to him in that very first game, the questions will get even louder. Even though who they're playing, it should be a difficult game. But if he goes out there and he kills it, and they beat Ohio State by 2 touchdowns, then suddenly all that doubt will die down and they'll be back on, yeah, he is the savior of Texas and he's going to win the Heisman.
I don't think any of that's unfair. And I will say, I heard, in fact, I think I said last week, we'll get a real good idea of if he is the guy that everybody expects him to be or not real early. But I would go one step further and say, I'm going to walk that back. Maybe not, because over the past 10 years, I know that we have talked about the Ohio State University being wide receiver U, running back U. You sent what, like two running backs inside the top 3 rounds of the NFL draft this year?
Well, one of them we don't want to talk about right now.
Yeah, not right now, but you sent him, whether or not he does anything with it. But 2 running backs, a wide receiver. I mean, Ohio State has been sending skill guys left and right the last couple of years. And what's gotten lost in that proverbial sauce, great one, is that the Buckeyes have also stacked defensive linemen and linebackers the last couple of years, too. Like, the front 7 of the Buckeyes has been as consistent as anybody else's in football. I will say, I could very well see Arch Manning losing that week 1 contest because the Buckeye front 7 is just bloodthirsty, and then having a couple of games for Texas to kind of pick up the pieces, rebuild them, and be ready for Georgia, who will have the same philosophy. I think it is possible that maybe Arch struggles a little out of the gate, and then there's a rebuilding process, because what a hell of a start for his first time at QB1. But I absolutely will not be shocked if Arch Manning ain't there, and that seems to be a prevalent thought here at SEC Media Days.
And now, the Rob Brown Show presents Twitter.
We shall see. It's very exciting because it's football season. All right, the first thing that is Xing today is Trey Smith. Okay, he just signed the biggest contract in NFL history for a guard.
Yeah, highest paid guard in NFL history. $94 million contract extension with those Kansas City Chiefs. Great googly boogly. Look, I think it's a great idea for Kansas City, because I know you want to spread the money around, but I think you guys got younger at the skill position, and I think you did that so that you could invest in the offensive line, because I don't know if you know this or not, Patrick Mahomes is very fat. He's probably going to be out there on a rascal scooter.
I have heard that. Definitely a rascal scooter for sure. Yeah. All right, the next thing it's Xing, sorry, now I'm picturing that, is Wyndham Clark.
Wyndham Clark. What did Wyndham Clark say? Because he said something.
No, Wyndham Clark beat up the Lockers at Oakmont, and he is now banned from playing at Oakmont. Wow. Unless there's an apology, there's some things that he has to do to get back in.
I'm shocked if he hasn't done it already. By the way, did you see, and I wanted to get to this on the show, but we are obviously doing college football, so I'll come back to it probably on Friday. Did you see the comments from Scotty Scheffler? Scotty Scheffler, of course, the greatest golfer on planet Earth right now, said yesterday that winning doesn't really do it for things. He's like, yeah, you feel like satisfaction for 2 or 3 minutes, but then it's like it's over, and it's just kind of on to the next thing. He said, effectively, winning's not really all that important to him. It's more about, like, just being the best golfer he can be. And a lot of people are up in arms because, like, that's not the Mamba mentality or whatever. I'm going to tell you this. You can say Scotty Scheffler's philosophy and approach to golf is wrong when he stops beating everybody's ass all the time. End of take. End of show. That's it for us. We're live at SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. Coming up on tomorrow's show, Ben Watson from the SEC Network and 1996 Heisman Trophy winner and national champion Danny Werfel. I will sit down with both this afternoon. We'll have those interviews for you tomorrow. Follow me on social media at The Rob Brown Show and at The Fan Update. I'll keep you updated for the rest of the day. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. For Lonzo, I'm Rob. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow for the final day of SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. This is The Rob Brown Show, presented today by our President Angels on the Fan Upstate.
Live from SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, you're listening to a special edition of The Rob Brown Show, powered by your local Ingles Market. Low prices, love the savings on the Fan Upstate.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-497-8091. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have over 1,000 five-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-497-8091. That's 800-497-8091. Tax Relief Advocates, real solutions for real people.
This is Joe Cordell of Cordell & Cordell. Cordell & Cordell is the largest family law firm in the country with over 35 years of helping clients navigate divorce. That does give us certain advantages, for example, in experience and resources. But being big doesn't mean less personal or less local. Our attorneys live and work in your community, and as neighbors, they understand the challenges your families face. If you're a guy facing divorce, remember, Cordell & Cordell, a partner you can count on.
Joseph Cordell, licensed in Missouri and Illinois. CordellCordell.com.
Being a parent is hard, but finding support is easy. If you're expecting a new baby or raising a young child, First 5 South Carolina can connect you with free services and resources in your community. At first5sc.org, it only takes a few minutes to check your eligibility and find a program that
goodbye.
meets your child's needs. From food assistance to childcare, special needs services to parenting support,